I was gone, for real, no pulse, completely finished. My old life was wiped out by cancer. Without a family, home, or wife, there was zero reason left to hang around. My final year was spent blowing every penny of savings on travel, while grinding mount and blade all night long. Totally living up to my absolute legend status back then. Right in the middle of a gaming session, boom, lights out, air gone. Sayonara, cruel world. Except it wasn't goodbye. Instead, my eyes snapped open inside a gloomy cave. Howling wolves echoed sharply from the dark outside, sounding like they were auditioning for a low-budget horror flicks soundtrack, with a crackling bonfire blocking the exit, and two medieval-looking dudes huddled defensively behind it, like the most terrified camping partners on Earth. Mars was the massive blonde guy, clutching an axe, whose physique resembled an industrial-sized refrigerator. Meanwhile, the skinny companion went by the literal name of Dung Fork, proving his parents clearly held zero affection for him. Now comes the hilarious plot twist. Memories slammed into my consciousness like an 18-wheeler. Turns out I had transmigrated straight into someone else's physical shell, who also happened to be named Hogarth. Talk about lucky me, right? Wrong, because this particular Hogarth's existence was somehow even more depressing than my previous one. My newly acquired kin, the Kalinza clan, historically stood as one of the 5 founding Duke houses belonging to the Swadino Empire, which used to be a massive deal with powerful bloodlines. Legendary dragon blood pulsing through our veins. The whole deluxe package. Following 300 years of truly spectacular failures, though, Grandpa got himself slaughtered while battling orcs, prompting the Empire to pin the blame on us, slash our noble rank down to the absolute bottom tier, and let every random baron steal our ancestral lands. Dad then died a year ago, trying desperately to earn a living wage as a traveling adventurer, leaving me as the last surviving Kalinza, standing at 14 years old, skinny as a twig, and having missed out on proper meals for ages. Oh, and according to the Empire, if I failed to secure land within 12 months, they're permanently stripping my noble title away, to make me a nobody for the rest of eternity. Securing land happens to cost a hefty 50 gold coins, whereas my inventory holds a pathetic 10 copper coins, essentially needing 50 grand while walking around with a single crumpled dollar. To fix this, baby Hogarth, meaning the original owner, liquidated the family's final crumbling shack, scraped together 5 precious gold coins, purchased a cheap sword, registered officially as an adventurer, and signed up for this flower-gathering quest spearheaded by Mars. The mission was picking 100 black rooster flowers from Thorn Valley to split 2 gold coins equally 4 ways. Sounds like easy cash, right? Wrong, because some absolute genius in our squad accidentally wandered into a wolf den, right in the middle of breeding season, stepping straight into the wolves' actual living room. Naturally, those wolves took it personally, causing us to scatter while one guy got mauled unconscious. As for original Hogarth, he flatlined from sheer terror combined with severe malnutrition, which is precisely when I moved into his shoes, like the universe's most disastrous Airbnb swap. Now, stretching motionless here while pretending to stay knocked out. I overheard mosh vispering quietly to Dung Fork. Once the fire dies down, out they toss him to the wolves for a quick snack, while I make a mad dash for that tree. As a distraction, they planned on feeding me straight to the pack, acting like I was just a human chew toy, which sent shivers down my spine. A starving 14-year-old noodle boy is all I am. Even a gentle breeze could knock me right over, let alone heavyweights like Fridge Man and Dung Fork. Yet out of nowhere, thank goodness, a mysterious voice suddenly echoed inside my head. Mount and blade system downloading now. My golden ticket finally dropped, making me want to scream with pure joy. Well, almost scream, keeping in mind the hungry wolves and psychotic teammates nearby. System currently merging with reality. An unexpected error occurred. Please hold on. Hold on. I'm about to become the main course for these beasts. While this system buffers slower than bad Wi-Fi. 10 painfully long minutes later. Merge complete and character successfully bound to host. My stats popped up on screen, Commoner Hogarth. Level 1 with a constitution of 4. And an intelligence of 6, meaning I'm basically a fragile paper nerd. Luckily, 4 free attribute points were waiting for me, along with a weirdly high weapon proficiency stat. Archery sat at 91, plus an inventory featuring 60 slots. Tucked inside that inventory sat 1 longbow, a single quiver of arrows, and 5 gold coins. Actual spendable, Empire minted currency. gleaming gold dragons stamped with tiny dragon engravings. Because apparently my bloodline traces back to dragons, even though the royal family claims the grand title of Red Dragon Clan, while we are stuck as the Wind Dragon Clan. Fancy titles mean nothing for a family that owns absolutely zilch. Testing out the inventory, I imagined a single gold coin, and it materialized right in my palm. With another quick thought, it vanished straight back into the magic pocket dimension, essentially acting as a personal, invisible backpack that nobody can ever spot or pickpocket. In a brutal reality where I'm dead broke, starving to death, hunted by hungry wolves, and about to get backstabbed by my own teammates, I suddenly possessed a cheat system, a bow I somehow instinctively know how to fire, and the safest hiding spot on Earth for my lunch money. Things were finally looking up for me. That is, assuming I make it through the next 30 minutes, all right? So here I am, sprawled out in a reeking cave full of animal waste, while two dudes actively scheme to feed me to wolves. And I've just unlocked a cheat system. Time to dump all my stat points, like a reckless Black Friday shopper, completely lacking any self-control over attributes. Every single point went straight into Constitution, without a moment of hesitation, which was a huge mistake. Well, not necessarily a total mistake, except nobody bothered to warn me. It would feel like having my actual blood swapped out for piping hot soup. My internal organs felt like they were slow roasting, from the inside out. Cold sweat poured off my skin like a broken faucet. My muscle fibers began tearing apart, only to stitch themselves back together much bigger, tougher, and way meaner. Plus, a foul-smelling black gunk oozed out through my pores like I was a ruptured garbage bag. It was absolutely vile. Thank goodness the cave already smelled like an open sewer, because Mars and Dungfork didn't even notice a thing. Their eyes were completely locked on the wild wolf glare, piercing through the pitch-black exterior. While all of that was going down, I was low-key leveling up in total silence. Once the upgrade stopped, I looked down and saw pure six-pack abs. My fragile twig arms were suddenly ripped with real muscle. My oversized shirts instantly felt skin-tight. I had even gotten a solid height boost out of nowhere. Just 5 minutes prior to this moment, I looked like a starving scarecrow standing in a dead field. Had I dropped in even one extra stat point, my physical form would have literally disintegrated. My body was pushed way past its absolute breaking point. The only reason I didn't lose my mind and yell out was because battling severe illness back in my previous reality already taught me how to suffer in total quiet. Next up came allocating 10 weapon points. My archery stat was already sitting high at 91, leaving all other skills behind. So I dumped every single point right into bow mastery, vaulting it past the 100 mark. And that was the exact moment things went totally crazy. The glowing words, Beginner Mastery, suddenly flashed across my system panel. This feature was completely absent from the original game, because my interface had merged directly with the raw combat techniques of this realm. A massive wave of data downloaded. 2 full years of intense archery muscle memory into my head. Scorching sun, pouring rain, and thousands of arrows tearing through wooden targets flashed through my consciousness in a fraction of a second. Without me lifting a single finger, my forearm bones elongated. Not in a freakish way, just perfectly shaped for drawing a heavy bowstring. My upper back muscles built up thick, while my vision sharpened to such an extreme degree that I could pick out every single glowing wolf eye, hidden deep within the dark shrubbery outside. I went from someone who couldn't hit the side of a barn, straight to sniping a housefly from 100 yards away. According to the rules here, mastering a single combat discipline, plus hoisting a 200-pound boulder above your head, is all it takes to qualify as an apprentice knight. I threw out a test flex and realized, oh yeah, I could easily crush that requirement now. Me, the broke kid who couldn't even afford dinner yesterday, was suddenly clearing the baseline standards for knighthood. Stepping up to apprentice knight meant unlocking better quests, higher payouts, and open access to lucrative mercenary gigs. Actual cash flow. The exact kind of money needed to finally secure that pricey 50 gold coin land permit and rescue my fading family name from total ruin. First things first, though, I needed to survive the next 5 minutes. Boss, the campfire fuel is running dangerously low. Dungfork mumbled with a shaky voice. Just throw that kid to the wolves so we can sprint while they feast. Mars barked back, his expression ice cold. Dungfork gave a nod and pivoted in my direction, fully expecting to grab a helpless and completely out of it weakling, only to be met with a totally different reality. The split second his hand lunged toward me. I yanked out the blade I had been gripping this entire time. and sliced his throat wide open in one fluid motion. A single clean strike sent him crashing down like a dead weight, while warm blood splattered everywhere. Mars whipped around with total shock frozen across his face, as his partner gasped for air on the dusty stone floor. The defenseless weakling crouched there in sheer panic, clutching a bloody blade alongside a brand-new physique. I suddenly lunged forward, striking his neck lightning fast like a striking viper. The low cave ceiling forced him to stay completely hunched over, rendering his massive battle axe completely useless in the tight space. He barely managed a clumsy block, stumbling backward right into the blazing campfire. Hearing him shriek was absolute music to my ears. Look, I'm not saying I love doing it, though. When someone literally tries to use you for wolf chow, all sympathy vanishes real quick. So I just took my very first human lives ever. And let me tell you, a solid 0 out of 10. Definitely wouldn't recommend as a chill evening hobby. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, my stomach was doing backflips, and 2 very lifeless corpses were bleeding all over the cavern floor. Still, hey, it was either them or me becoming a wolf's happy meal. So I shoved the trauma down and got straight to work. First priority on the list: looting the bodies like an epic gamer protagonist. Wallet? Mine now. Done forged leather shoes? Let me check the size. Close enough, I'll take him. Mars's armor was way too big, yet I wrapped it around myself like a medieval bathrobe, and tied it tight. Everything I couldn't wear got tossed straight into my magical, invisible inventory, man. Do I love that feature? Then I chucked Dunford's corpse right out the cave exit, like the creepiest bowling ball imaginable. The wolves went completely feral, one massive beast, and I'm talking cow-sized, with fangs sticking out like butcher knives. Snatched him up instantly, while the rest dogpiled right on top. These weren't any cute forest puppies. These things were pure nightmare, fuel with legs. That chaos gave me my window. I whipped my trusty bow right out of the inventory. Poof, instant lâcher mode, and started dropping wolves, before they even realized what hit them. 4 down in seconds, arrows flying fast like angry hornets. The survivors scattered quickly back into the bushes, probably heavily rethinking all their life choices. I gathered every useful piece of gear: Mars's axe, the supply bag, and 3 heavy wool blankets, stuffing it all into my inventory, then sprinted like mad for the sole climbable tree nearby. The alpha wolf chased me fiercely, and I felt its sharp claws rake across my back, hard enough to shred through the armor. Had I not been wearing Mars's oversized leather makeshift bathrobe at that exact moment, my spine would have been saying hello to the fresh air. I scrambled up that trunk like a caffeinated squirrel. The wolf's jaws snapped shut barely an inch below my dangling foot, so for my secure branch, I pierced its neck with a clean arrow shot. Night-night, big guy. The remaining wolves kept returning to snack on the fallen carcasses, which was gross as hell, yet insanely convenient. They would sneak back and start chewing away, giving me the chance to pick them off one by one. Felt basically like the most twisted carnival shooting gallery ever. 12 wolves had been dropped by dawn. Once the thick morning fog finally burned away, a hunger so fierce hit me that I could have easily munched on a tree. Mars's supply bag was yanked open by me, only to find that absolute clown hoarding soft white bread and savory beef jerky through the entire journey while feeding us brick-hard black bread. Every single bite of that food was devoured by me, with 0 regrets before my absolute favorite perk revealed itself. Dead wolves can actually be crammed right into the inventory, with all 12 of them stacking neatly into a single slot. That magical pocket dimension of mine must be sorting items by category automatically, meaning a dozen massive wolf carcasses filed themselves away smoothly just like that, stored neatly like library books, with each individual beast valued at 3 to 5 silver coins, pushing the grand total to roughly 60 silver pieces. Just like that, I bounced from having merely 10 copper coins to actual serious wealth after one terrifying night. My arrows were scavenged back up too, with only 3 missing while the rest were high-end system gear, gifted straight from the system featuring iron tips and raptor feathers. Far from cheap garbage. That valley was abandoned by me, as fast as my freshly buffed leg muscles could sprint, carrying me out wealthier, tougher, and reeking like an absolute disaster. Level 2 was unlocked purely off that insane wolf slaughter, which rewarded me with 1 fresh attribute point alongside 10 weapon points. That precious attribute point was dumped right into Constitution. Once again, sending a rush through my veins like downing a warm energy drink. Those weapon points were stashed safely for later use, since slaughtering things naturally boosts proficiency anyway. Obviously, why waste free points when literal murder handles the grinding? Escaping out of Thorn Valley consumed half a day. Valuable world lore was absorbed through the original Hog's memories, explaining how bloodline magic forms the absolute foundation of this empire, carrying some beast genetic lineage in their veins. Alongside a matching breathing style is standard for every noble house. Wind Eagle blood powers the local lord's household, while my own lineage, the Collins family, possesses Wind Dragon blood, which is literally among the most overpowered bloodlines across the whole continent. The major catch is, it runs so fiercely that virtually 0 people manage to awaken it, explaining precisely why my family line ended up totally extinct. An elite bloodline paired with 0 individuals capable of wielding it makes for peak comedy, while the original Hog wasn't brainless either. The family's secret Wind Dragon breathing manual had been buried deep inside Black Rock City prior to his departure. Anyway, practice was impossible until hitting the apprentice knight rank. Plus, strolling around carrying top-tier secret manuals essentially amounts to walking around wearing a neon sign shouting, "Please rob me blind." A makeshift wooden sled was built by me, loading a pair of wolves on top, while keeping my magical inventory hidden, of course. The bow got strapped tightly on with the sword hanging off my belt, allowing me to saunter right into the nearest village, giving off major, baby-faced action hero vibes. Villagers stared wide-eyed, as if they were watching a toddler haul a grizzly bear home. Old Man Bill over at the general store attempted lowballing me, offering a measly 8 silver for 2 wolves featuring pristine pelts, though I successfully argued him up to 8 silver plus a solid pound of salt. Things were mid, though my market knowledge was straight up 0. Plus, I had 11 extra wolves stashed in my invisible pocket dimension. So honestly, who cares? At the local tavern, I treated myself to a low-key feast. Beef, white bread, vegetables, and rice wine, costing 30 copper, an amount that would have made the old Hog cry tears of luxury, considering that kid used to sleep in ditches and chew on rocks. Disguised as bread, not me though, since I'm rolling with a cheat system now. We were eating like absolute kings until a heavily perfumed lady, built like a literal refrigerator, squeezed up right next to me, and offered an unforgettable night for the low price of 1 silver coin. Her cheap perfume came in swinging, nearly knocking me out cold, way faster than those actual wolves did. My new constitution stats were probably the only thing saving me from completely blacking out. I politely turned down the village's resident heartthrob, a scented woman wide enough to block an entire doorway. Yet she still had the absolute nerve to keep pitching. "You're blushing, it's your first time, right? Ma'am, please." "I'm only blushing because your heavy cologne is literally melting my eyebrows off." My hand instinctively dropped to my sword hilt, and she finally waddled off into the dark outside. The bartender watched her leave and let out a heavy sigh, as if I had just ghosted an actual supermodel. "That's wheat flour right there, the prettiest woman in the village, man." "Sure thing, buddy. Different strokes for different folks, I guess." Out here in the sticks, wide hips apparently equal top-tier wife material, since they can pull heavy labor shifts and pop out babies. 460 copper, I booked a private room for myself, plus 10 pounds of white bread to snack on for the road. Bolting the door shut, I immediately crashed onto a sketchy bed made of rough wooden planks and dry hay. Pure peras, honestly. Before finally catching some ZS, I looted Mars and Dung Fork's wallets. Mars had been sitting on 1 gold coin and 12 silver the entire time, while forcing us to eat trash-tier bread, and secretly plotting to feed me to the wolves. Dung Fork only had 10 silver, totally fitting his generic NPC vibe. Meanwhile, I also discovered that my inventory only takes gold coins directly, leaving out silver and copper, which is super annoying. Still, I found a workaround by wearing a decoy wallet right on my belt, while keeping the actual stash safely locked inside my inventory bags. Good luck pickpocketing that criminal's morning came fast, and I hit the open trail carrying enough bread to feed a small army, spending 2 solid hours hidden in a secluded forest, practicing my swordplay, because I needed to figure out how weapon proficiency actually functions. And the test results were clear. Swinging a sword earns points way quicker than messing around with an axe. Drilling basic techniques nets faster gains than just throwing random attacks, while grinding advanced techniques yields the fastest progress of all. So I locked in on the whirlwind slash, a special move my original body's father had taught him, though he never actually mastered it, grinding out skill levels like a true, dedicated gamer. 2 days later, Black Rock City loomed large on the distant horizon, looking like a massive black beast squatting across the open plains. Its dark stone walls stood ancient, towering, and genuinely intimidating, making me feel like a tiny ant marching toward a sleeping dragon. Along the travel route, I had managed to offload the remaining wolf carcasses, village by village, netting another 42 extra silver coins. Pretty solid loot for cargo I'd been hauling. Inside a stealthy magic dimension. Just walking into town cost me 20 copper for existing, a mandatory head tax levied on everyday citizens every single time they step past any city gate. Aristocrats get a free pass, naturally, though my own noble family crest stayed safely hidden away, because the original kid wasn't about to toss away the final proof of his lineage. Smart when it came to books, this kid, though terrible at staying alive, yet freakishly good with paperwork. Black Rock City reeked exactly how you'd picture a medieval settlement with zero plumbing whatsoever. Horse manure drifting down currents of raw sewage. Muddy alleys doubling as open-air toilets. And a stench so suffocating I could practically taste it. Most locals rocked straw sandals or went completely barefoot, making my pilfered leather boots from Dunfork look downright high-class by comparison. I made a beeline straight for the Adventurers Guild, a bustling 2-story stone fortress buzzing with activity. Slapped 100 black rooster flowers onto the counter, and slid Mars's wooden ID badge across the wood. The clerk didn't even bother looking up, nor did he ask why. The badge's actual owner wasn't standing before him. Adventurers drop like flies around these parts anyway, and nobody cares enough to launch an investigation. 2 gold coins secured, mission accomplished. My invisible stash now boasted a total of 8 gold. I gave a job board a quick skim on my way out. Flower picking, cargo holding, cart pulling, firewood chopping. Poverty wages offered for bone-crushing labor. None of that junk was worth my time anymore, seeing as I'm a wolf-slaying, system-powered future knight. I got standards now, you know. Some muscle-bound clown wielding a massive greatsword blocked my path by the exit, dropping a casual "Hey kid, where's Mars hiding?" Lucky punk. Buy me a round of rum, and I'll hook you up with legit gigs. Nice try, buddy. I've spotted this exact scam before. Act friendly toward the naive rookie, then pinch his 2 gold coins. By Tuesday, I walked right past him without giving him a second glance. Next destination was the Knights Guild, to figure out the toll for taking the Apprentice Knight exam. The total price tag hit me right in the wallet. 10 gold coins, can you believe it? 10. I possessed 8, so close, yet agonizingly far away. This brutal world charges you for literally everything. Want to step inside a city? Pay up. Want to prove your strength? Cough up more. Hoping to own a scrap of land? Better sell a kidney. Seriously. Night descended while I was brooding over my finances. Drifted me straight into a shadowy, deserted backstreet. Pulled straight from the original Hog's memories. That precise moment delivered 2 figures in dark robes, stepping out from the gloomy overhangs, blocking me with one in front and another behind. Sinister white crow emblems stitched onto their sleeves. Hand over those 2 gold coins, kid. Those funds were never meant for you anyway. The Crow Gang. The original Hog's memories painted a crystal-clear picture, identifying Black Rock City's most notorious underground thugs. These guys are basically the city's cockroaches, parasites preying on the vulnerable, stealing from the desperate, with zero remorse for their shady moves. They take after carrion crows, because they strip anything already dying down to the bone. And right then and there, a scrawny 14-year-old drowning in massive armor caught their eye, giving off major, easy money vibes. Those guys must have trailed me straight from the Adventurers Guild, peeping as I bagged those 2 gold coins, then waiting for sundown. Acting like the total cowards they are, 2 dudes in black cloaks faced off against a single teenager rocking a dead guy's leather bathrobe, down a street reeking of an open sewer. I had already survived Wolf's betrayal, a full body stat overhaul that almost blew me to pieces, plus the world's most aggressive plus-sized escort. These 2 wannabe Crow cosplayers were about to find out that the skinny kid, they had been stalking pack pipes like a junior bodybuilder, along with archery skills, sharp enough to pin a fly to a wall from 100 paces away, though they were totally clueless about that yet. All they spotted was a terrified little boy, holding gold in his pocket with nobody around to have his back. Talk about a major blunder. A pair of Crow Gang thugs trapped me inside a shadowy alley, stinking like an absolute toilet. One of them brandished a short axe while the other gripped a sword, both carrying the sheer confidence of guys who had never heard the word no from a skinny teenager before. I instantly slapped on my most pathetic orphan expression. Please, big brothers, if I hand over everything I've got, I'm gonna starve. How about you just take a single gold coin, and we call it even? My voice cracked on cue, giving a total Oscar-worthy performance. The axe guy sneered as he stepped in closer. Whether you live or bite the dust ain't our problem, kid. Perfect, that was close enough. My blade flashed out of its sheath and slit his throat, before his brain could even process that the scared little kid had suddenly evolved into a scared little kid wielding elite sword techniques. He clutched his neck, his eyes bulging out from pure disbelief, and dropped down. His buddy took one look at the sudden blood fountain, screamed bloody murder at the top of his lungs, and scattered like a roach when the kitchen lights flick on. Man, these Crow Gang boys are real brave. Terrifying reputation backed by wet paper courage. I switched over to my bow so fast. It looked like a magic trick to anyone watching, which honestly, it kind of was. One arrow pierced right through the runner's neck, sending him face-planting straight into the mud. 2 for 2 with 0 witnesses and roughly 8 seconds elapsed time. I looted both corpses at hyperspeed, wallets, weapons, shoving everything straight into my inventory, and melted into the shadows like a ghost, sporting an oversized leather bathrobe. Shortly after, random passersby stumbled upon the 2 dead Crow Gang members, took one quick look at those Crow emblems, and bolted, faster than my arrows fly. Nobody wants any part of Crow Gang drama. Half an hour later, a fresh batch of crow-robed goons showed up to drag the bodies away. Half an hour after that, finally, the city guards rolled up on the scene. Roughly 15 seconds was the total duration of their investigation. The Crow Gang had already swept everything clean, nice and neat. Not our circus, not our monkeys, pack it up boys. Peak law enforcement at its absolute finest. At this point, I knew it was only a matter of time before those crows figured out who dropped their boys. I wasn't exactly keeping a low profile while strolling through the Adventurers Guild earlier today. So yeah, it was high time to dip. I pulled off a speed run to the late-night storefronts, scoring white bread worth 2 silver pieces, and another 2 silver of beef jerky, all stored in my inventory, which keeps grub fresh, acting essentially like a medieval refrigerator, neatly tucked inside my head. Shadowy back alleys guided me straight to the gritty eastern slums. Scaling a tree and clearing a tall brick wall in one fluid motion brought me crashing down inside a massive, deserted compound, formerly owned by the Wild Wolf Mercenary Company. A major mission had drawn them deep into the forest a year ago, leaving a casualty rate of precisely 100%. Nobody made it back. Big oof for them, but their loss became my sweet secret base. Back in the day, the original hog used to sneak over here as a kid, since his family estate sat right next door, prior to selling it off. Before skipping town, that smart kid had buried the family stash under a tree, right out in the training yard. Up from the dirt came a wooden box wrapped tightly in sheepskin, which I immediately slotted into my inventory, before relocating to an empty barracks room featuring a dusty, lonely single bed waiting in the shadows. A wool blanket spawned from inventory, along with a quick bite and drink to match. Door bolted tight, lights killed completely. Total bliss achieved. Sunlight hit the following morning, and I audited the Crow Gang wallets. A pathetic total of 30 copper split between the 2 of them. 30 whole coins, man. These clowns risked life and limb trying to rob me of 2 whole gold pieces, only to roll up with 0 lunch money between them. The sheer audacity of broke individuals attempting a heist on someone slightly less broke will never cease to blow my mind. Popping open the wooden chest next made my heart practically skip a beat. Resting right on top of a heavy, weathered sheepskin tome was a silver blue badge, featuring a wind dragon stamped right in the middle, intersected by a knight's trusty sword and lance across the back. Kalinza, this was it, baby. My actual family crest, functioning as the sole tangible proof that I am the rightful heir to the Kalinza barony. Forged entirely from mithril, a magical metal worth an absolute king's ransom. Letting this badge slip away would equate to erasing my entire identity and future prospects in a single blow. And tucked right underneath lay the crown jewel, the Wind Dragon Breathing Manual, representing the legendary cultivation technique of the Kalinza family. handed down across 3 solid centuries. My fingers were genuinely shaking as I lifted it up, dedicating the entire day to devouring the mechanics of the first tier. Turns out the discipline is split into 3 distinct phases. Level 1 is specifically tailored for apprentice knights, requiring you to inhale ambient magical energy straight from the atmosphere and refine it deep within your bloodstream, thus leveling up your physical stats and life force, until a nascent life seed eventually sprouts inside you. Let that seed sprout out. Pure battle energy begins generating, and boom, congrats. You're officially a real knight, while tiers 2 and 3 get even crazier, bringing blood awakening and a fierce battle aura, earning the title knight territory. But honestly, that's future Hog's headache. A thick tome sat in hand because every single Kalinsa ancestor who managed to practice it successfully had scribbled down their own personal notes, right along the margins. Generations worth of "here is what worked for me" wisdom, paired with warnings like "avoid this or your kidneys will explode," all packed into a single sheepskin volume. While the core instructions stayed brief, they read just like ancient poetry, strikingly beautiful yet totally confusing. Thank goodness for those ancestral cliff notes. Learning the wind dragon technique isn't actually that hard. That's the good news, but the bad news is it is ridiculously expensive. Massive amounts of resources are required to fuel this intense body transformation, which totally explains why my family went broke and extinct at the exact same time. Just imagine owning the sports car of magical bloodlines while needing premium fuel that cost more than what most families make in 10 years. That was the brutal Kalinsa curse, housing the continent's strongest breathing technique, with a hefty price tag attached. That bankrupted every single person who dared use it. Yet I possessed something no previous Kalinsa ever had. A cheat system capable of bumping my stats right up. Plus un magique inventory doubling à portable armory. And a fridge alongside the reckless optimism of a guy who already kicked the bucket once and figured everything moving forward was just bonus time. Crouching low inside a dead mercenary group's barracks while munching on stolen bread and reading my family's ancient dragon manual by moonlight. If you had told my old, cancer-ridden, game-addicted self back in my past life that this weird scenario would be my afterlife, I'd have died laughing, which technically I actually did. So I popped open the Wind Dragon breathing manual, looking forward to some deep mystical enlightenment, and instead received the worst financial heartbreak of my entire 2 lives. Turns out that practicing this legendary family method is pretty much like owning a Ferrari that runs purely on liquid gold. The core breathing trick works by sucking magical energy straight out of the air, filtering it directly through your blood, and gradually leveling up your physique. They literally call it blood exchange, which sounds pretty metal. And yeah, it is metal, but here is the catch. Your body burns through its own life force while doing this, and regular food simply cannot replenish it fast enough. You need magical potions, enchanted fruits, and straight-up monster meat, forming a grocery list that costs way more than most houses. My ancestors helpfully pointed out that, at the apprentice knight stage, at least 1 bottle of beginner life potion is required per month, with each single bottle costing several hundred gold coins. Meanwhile, I got 8 gold coins and a looted leather bathrobe, meaning I'll need to rob every single Crow gang member in town for roughly the next 400 years to afford a single month of training supplies. Now I understood why. My dad never let the original Hog touch this manual. Not because he was cruel, because he was protecting his son from the world's most addictive trap. Once you start practicing and feel that sweet power flowing, you can't stop, but without proper resources, you're basically eating your own life force. My dad learned that lesson the hard way. He practiced without enough supplies, damaged his core vitality, watched his strength slowly drain away over years, and died as a shadow of what he once was. Heartbreaking, honestly. Even I felt a pain for a man I never actually met. But here's where my situation gets delicious. My cheat system changes the entire equation. Every time I level up and dump points in a constitution, my blood vitality replenishes and grows like crazy. The system basically is my infinite supply of magical protein shakes, where every Kalinsa before me needed expensive potions to fuel the breathing technique. I just needed to keep killing things and leveling up. The ancestors would be weeping with jealousy. So I started practicing 9 inhales, 1 exhale, 8 shallow breaths. 1 deep. The exhale had to cascade out like a waterfall, Smooth, powerful. Zero interruption. Complete one full cycle and you've succeeded. I failed and failed and failed and failed some more. Hundreds of times over 3 days. Imagine trying to pat your head, rub your stomach, juggle, and ride a unicycle simultaneously while breathing in a pattern. That feels completely unnatural. That's the wind dragon breathing method. Beginner edition, the easy version. Fourth morning, boom. I nailed it. Cold energy rushed into my lungs, transformed into a scorching river, flowing through every vein. And suddenly my entire body felt lighter, sharper, fundamentally better. This wasn't like the system stat boosts, which felt like getting inflated with a bike pump. This was evolution. My cells were upgrading themselves. According to my ancestors' notes, fully trained apprentice knights develop skin, tough as cowhide that arrows can't pierce. I was only at step 1, and already felt like a different species, and the power was intoxicating. No wonder my dad couldn't stop, even when it was killing him. This stuff is magical crack. The wooden box also held 3 bonus manuals. Whirlwind slash for swords, thrust for spears, and blood shadow slash. A proper knight level killing technique, requiring actual battle energy to use. Filed under goals for the distant future. The family apparently once owned over 100 combat manuals. Now we're down to 3 plus the breathing method. From 5-course royal banquet to leftover scraps. The Kalinza declined, summarized in one sad little box. Fueled up on dragon breathing and running hot. I grinded sword training like an absolute maniac. 10 solid days consisting of nothing but swing slash repeat. Sustained by magic inventory bread. 4 hours of sleep followed by more sword practice. My single-handed weapon mastery steadily climbed upward until reaching the 100 mark. Just like my previous archery milestone, beginner mastery popped up across my stat screen. A full year's worth of phantom training memories, downloaded instantly into my mind, doubling both my sword speed and overall combat power. My physique restructured itself yet again, reinforcing every single muscle utilized in swordplay. Yet Whirlwind Slash still refused to unlock. I was so close I could practically taste it, feeling like an annoying sneeze stuck halfway. 2 more days of grinding pushed proficiency to 110, before it finally triggered Whirlwind Slash beginner mastery. 3 years of simulated training. Memories crashed straight into my skull. The technique proved to be more than a simple attack, because it embedded a spinning, evasion footwork pattern right into the move. Attack and dodge bundled together neatly, like some medieval value combo meal. My 5 senses sharpened dramatically all at once. Not quite hitting superhero status, where you can hear a butterfly fart 3 miles away, but getting close. I could literally feel the air shifting around me. One bizarre discovery came to light, though. My 100+ points of weapon proficiency, applied exclusively to swords while picking up an axe or mace, made me feel like a total noob again. The system tracked each weapon category individually, under the single-handed weapons umbrella, meaning achieving axe mastery would require grinding another 100 points completely from scratch, which was a massive waste of time, since I already owned a solid sword specialty. Consequently, 2 weeks, hidden inside a dead mercenary company's barracks, transformed me from a starving teenager who used to faint running away from wolves into a dual specialty fighter, holding beginner mastery in both archery and swordsmanship, bolstered by an ancient dragon breathing technique, rebuilding my cellular structure from the inside out, and armed with combat reflexes sharp enough to sense incoming attacks before they land. Now I only needed 10 gold coins for the night exam, a safe route past the Crow gang who wanted me dead, and roughly a lifetime supply of luck. I could probably pull off 2 out of those 3. Mastering Whirlwind Slash took me 12 days, whereas the Kalinza family's legendary first founder, hailed as a generational genius, reportedly took half a year, while my system basically handed me 3 years of sword training in under a fortnight, while squatting in a dead mercenary group's bedroom and munching on bread like a fancy hobo. If my ancestors could witness me right now, they would feel either immensely proud or furious. But they spent decades grinding what I speedran. During breakfast time, with one major catch though, Whirlwind Slash drained stamina like an unplugged bathtub, leaving me completely wiped out after 30 minutes of combat, gasping for air like a stranded fish out of water. Besides that, I happened to notice the system status digits no longer accurately measure my true strength anymore. My constitution parameter still reads 9, Yet between the unique breathing technique, sword mastery, and whirlwind/upgrades, my actual power had practically doubled, way beyond what the display showed. Those system points are basically extra juice, piled on top of whatever gains I grind out through real training. It is like throwing a fat tip on an already solid meal. My rations ran completely dry after 2 weeks of intense hiding and training, which completely wiped out everything, especially since that dragon breathing method turned me into an absolute calorie-devouring beast. So under the cover of dusk, I snuck out, power walked to the closest bakery, grabbed some bread and jerky, and bolted straight back to my hideout. Little did I know that the dreaded Crow gang had been tracking me down this whole time. They had turned the outer city completely upside down, just to catch a glimpse of my face when brute force failed them. Some surprisingly sharp brain within their ranks finally came up with a bright idea to stake out local food joints and lean on shopkeepers to snitch on me. The very second I show my face at that bakery, I was spotted. I moved too fast for their tail to keep a direct lock on me, yet they successfully narrowed down my general zone, and acting like absolute rats who know every single crack in this filthy city, they quickly pieced together that I was crashing in the abandoned mercenary compound. The next morning, while splashing cold water on my face in the courtyard, mentally mapping out another peaceful day of uninterrupted sword drills, suddenly footsteps echoed all around, dozens of them swarming in from every single direction. "Ha ha! Found you, little rat," barked a massive thug in a dark robe, featuring a white crow embroidered right across his chest, not just on the sleeve like the regular foot soldiers, meaning this guy was an actual district boss. He kicked the rusty gate wide open, with over 15 eager gang members flooding in right behind him, while even more vaulted over the crumbling walls. Just like that, I was completely boxed in by the East District Crow faction. Basically middle management in the criminal underworld, yet dead serious about protecting their fragile criminal ego. I raised my beat-up sword and tried offering diplomacy. "One last time, look, boss, I never wanted any beef with you guys. How about we just call it quits?" He laughed so hard that all his cronies joined in. "Boys, don't kill him fast, skin him alive instead." So much for talking it out, as they rushed me all at once, forcing me to unleash my whirlwind slash in an actual life-or-death combat scenario for the first time. My entire body spun like a violent tornado, turning my blade into a blinding streak of light that sliced through everything within arm's reach. Blood splattered everywhere, agonized screams pierced the air, and bodies hit the floor. 15 Crow gang members dropped to the dirt within mere seconds, leaving the surviving thugs with expressions that were utterly priceless, radiating pure, unfiltered panic. We just made a catastrophic error in judgment. The Crow boss shrieked at the top of his lungs. "Yeah, buddy, surprise. That skinny orphan kid you've spent 2 weeks hunting down has secretly turned himself into a total killing machine, while you were busy flexing on helpless local bakers. Panic hit them all at once, since bailing out is pretty much their gang's official playbook. Whenever someone way stronger shows up, meaning sheer cowardice is literally written into their bylaws. Talk about a top-tier organizational culture. Right then, my garbage sword snapped clean in half. Because of course it did, that cheap junk metal, steel, stood zero chance against the sheer force of actual combat techniques. The Crowhead's eyes suddenly lit up like Christmas morning, shouting, "His sword's broken, rush him right now. And don't give him a second to grab another poor fool." Casually tossing the shattered blade aside into the dirt, I watched as a brand new, flawlessly intact replacement magically materialized, straight into my grip from my hidden inventory. Watching all the color totally drain from his face was honestly one of the most ridiculously satisfying highlights across both of my lifetimes, as I went right back to slicing through his goons like a hot knife cutting through totally terrified butter. True to form, the Crow head did what Crow gang leaders do best. He spun around and bolted. After swiftly dropping the final 2 fleeing runners with my blade, I transitioned to my bow in one smooth, fluid motion and sent an arrow clean through the boss's neck from 50 paces away. He face-planted right in the middle of a stride and never moved again. Leaving them alive wasn't an option because they'd all witnessed my inventory trick. That insane magical weapon swap feature, meaning letting witnesses go, who knew all about my secret storage sheet, was completely out of the question. Brutal. Sure, but this brutal world just runs that way. Scavenging the loot proved surprisingly productive, since the Crowhead was packing a legit single-edged broadsword. Heavy, thick, and forged 10 times over with actual, visible craftsmanship. That completely humiliated my disposable trash swords into looking like total garbage masterpieces. I also grabbed every single wallet, weapon, and remotely useful trinket off the fresh corpses, though most of them were practically as broke as the first couple of guys I'd iced, proving that being a career criminal in this wretched city pays about as well as being a career victim. Standing alone among a pile of 20-odd bodies, I suddenly gained a lot of clarity on power scaling. These dudes were all total amateurs with zero professional training. Yet I was only sitting at beginner apprentice knight tier, the absolute bottom rung of the professional ladder. Yet they still couldn't lay a single finger on me. Sure, things might have gone differently if they'd brought archers or even an ounce of real courage. But low-tier gangs like the Crows exist purely and simply because they're far too weak to handle real combat work. If they actually had real power, they'd be hired mercenaries or knights instead of pathetic alley rats shaking down defenseless teenagers, ditching that blood-drenched armor for good. I slipped into fresh, crisp black linen clothes and marched straight toward the Adventurers Guild before the remaining Crows figured out that their entire East District leadership had just been turned into premium lawn fertilizer. Right away, guess who I bump into? None other than that greatsword guy from earlier. Vanderos, grinning wide like Christmas came early as he yells, "Little brother, I desperately need an archer, so join my team right now. Our gig is rescuing a kidnapped kid. Some leather artisan's kid got kidnapped off the streets. A ransom deal is set down in 6 days at Maple Leaf Valley. 50 gold coins total are up for grabs among 10 people, yielding at least 3 gold per head, and more if you pull your weight for those 50 shiny coins." Leaving town was on my to-do list anyway, so the math basically did itself as I stepped into Greenwood Hills, otherwise known as Bandit Central, where society's absolute rejects end up once they have literally nothing left to lose. Runaway slaves bearing branded marks on their skin, starving peasants who could never manage their rent, and farmers squeezed completely dry by greedy lords roam here. Second chances are never handed out to the poor in this brutal world. You either scrape by while licking boots, or pick up a rusted blade to start ambushing folks along the forest paths. The Empire's classic solution involves bounty hunters hunting down bandits to kill or capture, selling them off as slaves to cash in their paycheck. It is a tidy little circle of absolute misery, and that sketchy ecosystem was precisely where my new team leader, Vanderos, wanted us all heading to rescue some leather merchants, Snatch Boy, out of a heavily guarded bandit camp in Maple Leaf Valley. A 50 gold reward looked pretty sweet on paper, though it felt like an absolute death trap in reality. Before that mission, though, I had to pass an audition for some silver-haired archer on the squad, who stared at me like I brought a water gun straight into a war zone. Carrying about doesn't automatically make you a real bowman, boss. The guy actually has to hit his targets. Thanks so much for the deep insight, Grandpa. That has got to be a groundbreaking observation. Vanderos led me straight to the training range behind the guild hall, 50 paces away with 5 arrows ready. I intentionally missed a single shot since passing required 3 hits, because only a total amateur reveals their full hand at poker. 4 successful hits and 1 clumsy accident made for a great impression without raising any red flags. The funny truth was that I could have nailed all 5 right into the bullseye, blindfolded while standing completely on my hands, though nobody needed to find out about that just yet. You got great raw talent, and you might even master combat archery someday, kid, Vanderos remarked aloud, while giving me a heavy pat on the back like a proud uncle. Buddy, I completely mastered combat archery 2 weeks ago, inside an abandoned barracks while scarfing down stolen bread. But sure, maybe someday works. After officially registering the mission using Mars's stolen ID tag, hey, I'm still getting great mileage out of that dead guy's paperwork. Vanderos gathered the entire 10-man squad together. Get your gear ready, and meet me by the south gate tomorrow morning bright and early. I am renting a cart, so standard operational stuff. What I accidentally overheard after walking away just now turned out to be way less standard. Why on earth are you recruiting that broke kid, boss? He literally has nothing worth stealing, silver hair whispered back with a sneer. That ungrateful brat scored 2 free gold coins last time, and wouldn't even buy me a glass of rum. So this time I am collecting my interest. Vanderos chuckled darkly under his breath. So this whole recruitment drive was actually a total setup. Vanderos planned to rob me blind during the mission, and probably dump my body in a shallow ditch. somewhere deep in bandit territory. Upon laying eyes on a teenager wielding a bow, that guy instantly figured. It was a quick bag instead of a potential teammate. This marked the second team leader in a row trying to play me, leaving me to wonder if there was even a single stand-up person across this entire adventuring scene, or if backstabbing was literally written into the job description. Whatever, I had already survived Wolves' betrayal, a full body, magical overhaul, and 20-something Crow gang members. Some clout-chasing, greedy sword for brains, with main character syndrome, wasn't about to ruin my week. I hit up the blacksmith for 2 quivers of iron-tipped arrows, totaling 60 pieces for 2 silver coins, then tracked down a chill, low-key spot, called the Violet Tavern way down in the South District, far away from any Crow gang turf, and locked myself inside a room to count my bag. And oh man, what a glorious bag it was, because taking out criminals pays insanely well. Spreading out every single wallet I had looted off the Crow gang corpses, I sorted through the coins. Like a medieval accountant on payday, gold went straight into my system inventory, while silver and copper got tossed into my belt pouch. The final tally came out to 18 gold coins, stored securely in my invisible pocket dimension, plus 65 silver and 98 copper sitting in my physical wallet. Just 2 weeks ago, I had a mere 10 copper coins to my name, and was seriously contemplating snacking on tree bark. Now, I was practically living that middle-class life. The night exam fee cost 10 gold, meaning I could afford it right then and still have 8 left over. Yet, that upcoming rescue gig promised at least 3 additional gold, and I needed every single coin I could stack to afford that 50 gold land permit. So the exam could wait while I celebrated with the most lavish feast of both my past and current lives. Roast goose, honey-glazed white bread, assorted veggies, steak, and rich mushroom soup. 3 silver coins bought me pure, unadulterated culinary joy. My entire body practically hummed with satisfaction. That dragon-breathing technique had completely turned me into a bottomless pit, burning calories faster than I could shovel food down, especially after surviving on dry bread and jerky for 2 weeks. Made this meal feel like an absolute religious awakening. Talk about a major letdown. Massacring over 20 Crow gang members didn't even level me up. Turns out, street thugs give garbage XP when you stack them against forest monsters. Fair enough, though. Those wolves were legitimately terrifying apex predators, whereas the crows were basically just aggressive pigeons with switchblades. Still, I did farm 5 extra points of sword proficiency, so it wasn't a total L. Pulling out the crow boss's broadsword, I fell head over heels because this piece was gorgeous. It matched the length of my disposable trash swords, featuring a wider blade and vastly superior steel, with intricate forge foldings visible right across the metal grain. Tapping the flat of the blade made it sing out a crisp, stunning ring that made my heart flutter. It was easily worth 20 gold on the open market, though selling it would be utter madness, since my cheap swords kept snapping right in the middle of a fight, as the sheer brunt of that devastating whirlwind proved too much for them to handle. Slash. Somehow, this gorgeous blade easily kept pace with every single move I pulled. The rest of my afternoon was spent locked away in my cramped little quarters, drilling sword stances with my brand new piece of steel. This broadsword felt completely natural, just like an extension of my own arm. It was noticeably heftier than my previous blades, though in a deeply satisfying way. Kind of like making the jump from a cheap plastic fork straight to actual silverware. Though I quickly hit a super annoying roadblock. Once your proficiency level climbs past 100, those basic techniques barely move the progress bar at all anymore. Only advanced combat arts manage to push those numbers up at any decent speed. Yet spamming whirlwind slash over and over burns through your stamina meter like an absolute wildfire, which basically means stuffing your face with mountains of food just to recover, which in turn means blowing the exact cash I was desperately trying to save. Train harder, eat more grub, drop more coin, need to hustle for even more cash, take on sketchier gigs, then grind even harder. Welcome to the literal hamster wheel of medieval self-improvement. By tomorrow, I'd be riding south, alongside a crew headed by a guy who totally planned to backstab and rob me, venturing straight into a valley crawling with ruthless bandits who made a living kidnapping kids for hefty ransoms, hauntingly carrying a dead guy's stolen identity, along with a secret magical inventory loaded with contraband weapons and blood money. Oh yeah, just another totally normal Tuesday in my brand new life. I needed a solid spear. I was low-key craving noodles from my old life. and I happened to be hauling a duffel bag full of dead men's hardware ready to be fenced. Talk about having your priorities completely straight after a hearty dinner of beef stew and potatoes, which was decent enough, though tragically devoid of any noodles. I aggressively stuffed 14 short axes and 10 swords straight into a dusty cloth sack, looking like the world's most aggressively sketchy Santa Claus. Pulled my heavy hooded cloak tightly over my head, and snuck out toward Black Rock City's legendary underground criminal shopping district, where 3 silver coins instantly greased the wheels past the bouncer guarding a doorway lit by a red lantern. Beyond it lay a narrow stone corridor, so intensely claustrophobic, it honestly felt like squeezing right down a giant's throat, navigating a sharp pair of twisting turns, before finally spitting me out into a vibrant, bustling, underground marketplace glowing entirely in crimson hues. Hundreds of shadowy, hooded figures were casually browsing through illicit weapons, sketchy potions, and various other items I really didn't care to inspect too closely. Every single shady underworld transaction happening across this entire city funneled directly through this exact spot, while somewhere deep in the inner district, some bloated noble was happily collecting a massive cut of rent off the whole operation. Eventually, I tracked down a shady arms dealer, dumped my heavy bag of murder tools right onto his wooden counter, and started haggling hard, just like a guy who had binge-watched way too many pawns shop reality TV shows back in his previous existence. Started my bid at 32 gold before successfully squeezing him up to 34 plus. A bonus iron spear thrown in for free. Sure, those weapons were easily worth double that price on the legitimate open market. Those stolen hot merchandise looted straight from dead gang members isn't exactly known for coming with a neat little store receipt. With that done, I snatched up my brand new spear, a glorious 2.5-meter pole of solid black iron, which was ideal for grinding out proficiency levels, and strolled right out. 52 gold coins richer, total cash in hand 52 pieces, seeing as the official land permit only cost 50. Technically speaking, I could apply for it right this second. Yet 2 entire lifetimes worth of built-in common sense was screaming at the top of its lungs that waltzing out into untamed wilderness, armed with nothing more than a scrap of paper and a ridiculously positive attitude, was basically volunteering yourself for a very fancy and premature funeral. Every single one of the 3 frontier choices was an absolute nightmare. Orcs constantly raided the harsh northern blood plateau. Then came the southern death swamp, where pioneers barely lasted 3 years alive. Finally, monsters, goblins, and allegedly undead infested the eastern wasteland. Monsters, goblins, and allegedly undead infested the eastern wasteland. Somehow, that eastern wasteland stood out as the safest option available. That brutal reality alone told you everything about the completely messed up real estate market of this empire. Establishing a territory successfully demanded a proper knight leading a 200-man militia, fully backed by thousands of settlers. Noble families pulled it off easily, because Daddy's deep pockets completely funded the entire operation. Meanwhile, I rolled up with 0 soldiers, 0 settlers, and 0 backing, armed with just a system letting me pocket wolves like snacks. Money first, army second, and a kingdom eventually, right on schedule. Functioning essentially as a medieval version of Amazon. The black market featured worse return policies and way more murder. While scrolling through listings, I stumbled across some old guy peddling copies of shield combat technique known as spin guard. 10 handwritten duplicates lay spread across a blanket like bootleg DVDs. 10 handwritten duplicates lay spread across a blanket like bootleg DVDs. For a simple photocopy, he demanded 30 gold coins each. My counteroffer of 3 gold nearly gave the geezer a heart attack. We finally settled on 5, leaving me holding a technique manual that may or may not have been completely legit. I walked away feeling like I had just successfully haggled a street vendor down from highway robbery to a mild scam. Next, I dropped 8 gold on a solid arm shield, crafted from oil-treated leather over iron and neatly lacquered. My digital wallet was literally crying in pain, though practicing proper shield techniques demanded more than strapping a dinner plate to your forearm. Well, technically you could, but honestly, I actually had standards now. Back inside my dimly lit-in room, I cracked open the manual expecting weeks of grueling practice. Just 2 hours later, literally 2 hours, Spin Guard was completely mastered, thanks to my system proficiency already topping 100 in single-handed weapons. Because this shield technique shared absolute DNA with Whirlwind Slash, my accumulated combat experience cascaded right into it. like rushing water, finding a shortcut downhill. Once again, my physical body underwent a total reshape. Narrower waist, thicker arms, and lightning-fast reflexes. Narrower waist, thicker arms, and lightning-fast reflexes. The shield transformed into a spinning blur that felt like a natural extension of my limb. 13 gold coins bought me a massive 2-hour power-up. Easily the best shopping trip of either lifetime. My combat loadout was honestly getting ridiculous at this point. Sword Mastery, Whirlwind Slash. Archery Mastery, Spin Guard. The Dragon Breathing Technique, plus a spear. And I hadn't even started serious grinding yet. I was out here collecting deadly combat arts like rare trading cards. The following morning called for a strategic packing routine. Visible supplies went into a regular backpack. Stuff fat to look heavy and authentic, while my actual valuables stayed hidden safely inside my invisible inventory. The physical backpack served essentially as a prop. A classic magician's misdirection, preventing anyone from wondering why. A teenager carrying 4 weapons and a month's worth of food. Traveled with an empty back. I rendezvoused with Vanderos and his crew right at the south gate. 2 gloomy, weary mules were hitched to a terribly rickety wooden cart. 10 rough adventurers were tightly packed together. Crew jokes were freely swapped, concerning which local tavern housed the most attractive barmaids. Climbing aboard, I claimed the furthest rear corner, far away from everyone else, and firmly kept my lips sealed. Probably half these guys were secretly plotting with Vanderos to strip me of my loot. The rest were merely expendable cannon fodder, who just hadn't realized it yet. Somewhere between being a broke orphan, passing out inside a dark wolf cave, and riding straight toward treacherous bandit territory, while packing a secret arsenal, along with 5 fully mastered combat styles. My everyday reality had turned low-key fascinating. Massively terrifying, sure, but undeniably interesting. 3 additional figures rolled up to the south gate, and instantly, the heavy tension got thicker than the city's open sewers. First came Gerhard, a massive wall of a man, strapped with a heavy mace, built like someone who routinely beat up his problems, until they simply stopped existing. Walking right beside him was a woman draped in a deep green hooded cloak, and a microscopic sliver of her face showing underneath. Was so ridiculously gorgeous that every single adventurer on the cart momentarily forgot how to breathe. Lastly, a young dude around my age showed up gripping a sword, making it obvious these 3 rolled as their own tight squad. The split second Gerhard locked eyes with the silver-haired Gale sitting on the cart. His face went pitch black like a thunderstorm. As it turns out, Gale had previously let slip some wildly disrespectful remarks about Gerhard's sister. The hooded stunner, and serious beef was brewing. Vondero leaped forward, acting like a shady medieval HR rep, trying to smooth things over, with all the genuine warmth of a sleazy used car salesman. Gale didn't mean anything by it. He's just a huge fan of your sister. Sure, his filter is broken, but his heart's in the right place. Meanwhile, Gale mumbled out an apology, while his eyeballs were literally glued straight to the woman's chest, like powerful fridge magnets. He tried covering it up by staring at the dirt. But come on, buddy. We all saw that playing it subtle was definitely not his forte. Gerhard accepted the forced apology, with the cozy warmth of an Arctic glacier, and the profound trust of a farmer watching a hungry fox. Promise on its honor not to touch the hens. Smart guy. I just sat quietly in my spot, coolly cataloging the group dynamics, like an anthropologist, observing a profoundly toxic family reunion. Vondero's original core crew was obviously tight-knit. Having run jobs together before, they effortlessly finished each other's vulgar jokes, and shared that comfortable, sinister vibe of veterans who had probably looted corpses side by side. Gerhard's trio clearly formed the outsider faction, leaving me completely on my own as the lone wolf, lurking in the back corner, with a cheat code, magical inventory, and precisely 0 allies to watch my back. The math here was terrible, a breakdown of 6 versus 3 versus 1. If things inevitably went south, and my past track record with shady adventuring parties strongly hinted, they definitely would. I was easily the most expendable guy sitting on this card. Gerhard had clearly run those exact same numbers in his head, because when he boarded, he deliberately sat near me instead of Andero's crew, shielding his sister, and the young guy behind his massive frame. Then, at the overnight camp, while Vanderos was generously distributing roasted beef jerky to his loyal squad, both Gerhard's group and I separately refused the food, and ate our own supplies 2 groups independently, deciding I'd rather eat stale bread then accept favors from that guy. Was either paranoia or excellent survival instincts. I was betting on the second one. That night, Gerhard casually strolled over to my corner. First time working with Fondero. He asked, voice low enough that the others couldn't hear. Yep, their six seemed very close. We should watch each other's backs deal. And just like that, I had my first alliance in this world. Forged not over shared values or friendship, but over the mutual understanding that we were probably both on the dinner menu and preferred not to be eaten. Beautiful foundation for a partnership, really. The journey took 2 days, through increasingly rough terrain. Once we crossed into Greenwood County, the landscape went from gentle farmland to endless, rolling hills covered in dense forest. Bandit country. The kind of place where every shadow could be an ambush, and every birdsong might be a signal. Even Vandero's chatty crew shut their mouths and started looking nervous. I spent the ride with my eyes closed, secretly practicing my wind dragon breathing technique, while everyone probably thought I was napping. Multitasking legend. Vonderall laid out the battle plan at camp. 2 of his guys, Horseshoe and Straw Sandal, former hunters from the region, would guide us through the terrain. The kidnappers had specified a sunset exchange at a riverbank in Maple Leaf Valley. Vonderall's ground. Team would pretend to bring the ransom. Get close, then attack. Meanwhile, 3 archers, Gale, a guy named Cole, and me, would hide in a maple forest on the hillside, overlooking the valley, and provide cover fire. Simple plan, clean plan. I had 0 complaints about the plan. My complaints were about the people executing it. We abandoned the cart at the forest edge and hiked 10 miles through rugged mountain trails until we reached the valley, shaped like a gourd, with a river running through the bottom, low scrub and rocks everywhere, and a beautiful maple forest. Climbing the right slope, textbook ambush terrain. Cole led us archers up into the maples to set positions. And here's where my paranoia alarm started. Screaming at full volume, Cole assigned me to 1 tree, then positioned himself and Gale on 2 trees, behind me and to my sides. If I were facing downhill toward the valley, they'd be aiming at my back. Right between 2 guys from Vandero's crew is where I found myself stuck, with a clear line of sight on me and absolutely 0 room to maneuver. Talk about a wild coincidence in a realm where my previous 2 squad leaders each tried to scam or betray me. Sure, I'm secretly royalty. Keeping my mouth shut, I shinnied up my designated tree, tucked my gear and blade within arm's reach, armed my bow, and hunkered down to play the waiting game. Yet inside the quiet of my own head, war games were running at full throttle. Should Cole and Gale decide to flip on me, fast reaction time was needed before their arrows flew. My inventory swap remained my ultimate trump card, flipping sword to bow in a split second, while a shield materialized out of thin air. None of them had a clue about my secret inventory trick, meaning pure overconfidence would seal their fate. Their own cockiness was going to be their downfall. The sun slowly dipped toward the jagged horizon, splashing the forest canopy in shades of gold and amber. Then, just as the twilight began to fade completely, 4 silhouettes crept out from the far end of the valley, masked and armed with a lethal mix of gear, a long knife, a curved sickle blade, and a heavy spear. They were dragging along a horse, carrying a canvas sack on its back, presumably with the kidnapped kid still breathing inside. 50 paces below me stood 4 low-level bandits, walking blindly into an ambush they never saw coming. They were escorting a hostage straight to a rescue squad, where half the members were likely plotting to backstab the other half. Notched arrow ready, I steadied my erratic breathing and braced for things to go hilariously, disastrously wrong. Because in my line of work, disaster isn't an if. It's a massive, guaranteed win. And boy, did it deliver on cue. The exact second Vanderall marched right past the intended ambush zone toward the kidnappers, like they were old drinking buddies. That was my cue that this whole rescue op was way faker than his supposed knightly honor. Without even flinching, raising a weapon, or looking nervous, the bandits casually peeled off their concealing masks and merged right into Vandero's crew, resembling co-workers meeting up for lunch. Because, honestly, that's exactly what they were all along. This entire rescue scheme was a trap, crafted purely to corner Gerhard's sister. That total creep Gale had his eyes set on her. Vanderall demanded first pick of the prize, and that poor kidnapping victim was mere bait to draw Gerhard's squad deep into the middle of nowhere, where nobody could ever hear them scream for help. The ransom gig, the sudden team recruitment, and the fake chivalry were all stage theater. Even my own recruitment into this mess was just Vandero's being salty. Over a cup of rum I never bought him. The guy literally engineered a completely fake rescue mission on the side, just to get payback for one rejected drink. The pettiness levels in this bizarre world were genuinely impressive. Meanwhile, high up on my maple perch, two sharp arrows came whistling at my back from behind. Gale and Cole arriving right on schedule. Here is the golden rule about trying to assassinate someone who has been expecting an assassination since breakfast. It rarely goes according to plan. Hardly had Vander slipped away from the kill zone when my arm shield was already strapped tight. As those arrows whistled through the air, I whipped around the pine trunk like a pro gymnast, deflecting both projectiles off my cold iron. The metallic clatter of arrowheads ricocheting off my shield felt like a standing ovation for my chronic paranoia. Right between Cole's eyes planted an instant return arrow, sending him tumbling out of his tree like overripe fruit. Gale low-key lost his mind in sheer panic, seeing his partner getting vaporized by the talentless kid made cowering behind a skinny trunk feel useless, equivalent to hiding behind a flimsy napkin. He didn't dare peek out. Smart survival instinct. Horrible tactical execution. Quietly dropping down, I strode right up to his tree. Total panic set in as he blindly let fly 3 arrows, every single one missing its mark completely, because pure panic and precise aiming never mix. One clean shot from me pierced his brow, fatal style. 2 fallen archers checked out, leaving 0 scratches on me. Both bodies got looted in a matter of seconds. Gale's composite bow proved to be a massive upgrade, instantly stretching my lethal range by 50 solid paces. My old bow felt like tossing pointy toothpicks. When placed next to this absolute beauty, their wallets also found a new home in my pockets. Since looting corpses was basically my side hustle, down in the valley floor, things had gone completely sideways for Gerhard. Vanderaa turned out to be no ordinary slimy con artist. He was a certified combat professional, wielding a knight-tier technique known as heavy slash. One vicious overhead blow sent Gerhard flying across the jagged riverbed, bloody-mouthed with his heavy mace cracking from the impact. Gerhard was tough, but going up against a technique user, while lacking any techniques of your own, felt like trying to box a raging gorilla, with one hand securely tied behind your back. Vanderaa's crew closed in on Gerhard's trembling sister, and the young guy, grinning like wild hyenas. As cornered prey, a bleeding Gerhard threw himself back in, coughing up fresh blood, desperate to buy them a window to escape, even though he knew death was staring him in the face. Then my whistling arrows began raining down. The first bandit dropped instantly with a shaft through his throat, before anyone even heard the bowstring snap. A second followed, then a third and fourth, every single arrow ruthlessly finding a target. Massive panic gripped the bandits. This was no amateur sniper casually pot-shotting from a hillside. This was elite, professional-grade combat archery, delivering swift death from the dense tree-line at a speed their brains couldn't process. Vanderaa recognized the signature threat immediately. "Fall back. That's night-level bow technique," he roared. Abandoning his attack on Gerhard, he dove hard behind a boulder, screaming at his remaining men to scramble for cover. Only 2 actually made it. The 30-pace sprint across open ground turned into a gallery, where most runners failed to finish their frantic dash before dropping down. Gerhard's battered allies dragged him into the maple forest, while Vanderaa cowered low behind his rock shield, probably having a full existential crisis over why he tried to rob a system-powered archer. Holding a serious grudge, my first instinct was to vanish. Van đi trong lớp hỗn loạn này, để Vander ao sống với bí ẩn đó. Thế nhưng, sau đúng 3 giây suy nghĩ, tao nhận ra ngay, ý tưởng đấy cực kỳ ngớ ngẩn. Gã này có cả đống mối quan hệ ở Black Rock City. Hắn rõ mặt tao, biết tên tao, cả cái giấy phép thám hiểm nữa. Nếu tao cứ để hắn chuồn em, cả quãng đời khốn nạn còn lại của hắn sẽ chỉ dùng để truy sát tao. Còn tao phải sống trong nơm nớp lo sợ, giữa một cái thành phố mà bọn tàn dư băng cloud vẫn đang nhan nhản khắp nơi. Việc rước thêm một tên psychopath mang danh hiệp sĩ vào danh sách kẻ thù quả là một nước đi đại ngu ngốc. Vonderdo phải cút về chầu Diêm Vương ngay hôm nay. Hắn và 2 tên đệ tử sống sót đang nấp kỹ sau tảng đá lớn kia. Thế là tao đang rình rập giữa rừng phong, tay lăm cây cung composite mới. Ống tên đầy ắp, ngũ quan nhạy bén cực độ. Nhờ hiệu ứng luyện hô hấp rộng, để ngắm 2 tên cướp cùng một đội trưởng giả mạo. trùng đầu sau hòn đá và khấn vái tao biến mất. Tao không biến mất đâu, Vanderho à. Cái gã đang cuộn mình sau tảng đá. Trông y hệt con rắn được trang bị vũ khí khủng nhất thế giới. Lại còn dám cả gan cất lời thương lượng. Bertho à, tao cho mày toàn bộ tiền thưởng đấy. Với lại, cả con nhỏ kia, mày cứ sơi trước đi. Thấy sao nào? Tên này vừa mới thuê sát thủ mưu hại tao. Cách đây 10 phút, thế mà giờ hắn dám gà gấm tao cả đàn bà lẫn tiền bạc. Như một gã MC game show thời Trung Cổ vậy. Cái đồ chơi chén này khiến tao phục sát đất, suýt thì thế. Trong khi đó, Gerzat đang hấp hối giữa rừng phong. Hai nhát chém từ chiêu thức heavy shot của Vonderdo đã biến lục phủ mũ tảng gã thành cháo nát. Gã ho ra toàn máu tươi lẫn những mảnh nội tạng lợn cợn. Cảnh tượng kinh hoàng y như lời miêu tả. Bản thân gã cũng thừa biết thời gian chẳng còn nhiều. Tâm nguyện cuối đời chẳng màng gì phục thù hay vinh quang, mà là van nài tao hãy bảo vệ đứa em trai. Edith cùng cô em gái Alia của mình, khiến tao chần chừ. Bọn tao mới quen nhau vỏn vẹn 2 ngày. Cái liên minh lỏng lẻo này bắt nguồn từ sự đa nghi tột độ. Trên chuyến xe ngựa sóc này, nhưng nhìn cảnh lũ trẻ gào khóc. Trong khi anh trai chúng phải dùng ý chí để giữ lại đống ruột gan. Thì, cảnh đó đã chạm đến tao. Thêm nữa nhé. Dù tao chẳng lấy gì làm tự hào về tốc độ nảy số của cái suy nghĩ này, thì tao đang rất cần thêm lính cho mấy slot tổ đội của hệ thống. Nên việc hai kẻ trung thành từ dưng rơi chúng vào lòng tao, nghe có vẻ mờ ám đến mức đáng ngờ. Gerzat liền bồi thêm món hời lớn. Kỹ thuật thợ Berufan Côn gia truyền nhà gã, cùng một tuyệt kỹ chiến đấu hệ hiệp sĩ mang tên Heavy Style, kèm theo 3 đồng tiền vàng ròng. Toàn bộ gia sản của một gia tộc sắp tàn lụi, được trao trọn chỉ để đổi lấy một lời hứa. Được rồi, tao, Hồ Cô Linh Sa đây. Xin thề sẽ che chở cho họ chừng nào họ còn đi theo tao. Đôi mắt Gerzat mở trừng trừng. Ngài là người nhà cô Linh Sa sao? Thiếu gia của gia tộc dòng gió đó ư? Rõ ràng gã đã nhận ra danh tính dòng họ của tao. Đồng nghĩa với việc có cả một khúc mắc lịch sử mà tao chưa tài nào hiểu nổi ở đây. Nhưng trước khi tao kịp hỏi, gã lại ho ra thứ trông giống như phần gan còn sót lại của mình. Và mọi chuyện khép lại như thế, rồi một điều tuyệt vời đã xảy ra. Hệ thống của tao vừa tinh giao lên. Eric gets recruited by camp follower Alia alongside Swadino. With a loyalty of 80, a request to join your party pops up. Do I accept? Yes. Oh, absolutely 1,000 times yes. My first 2 party members were brought in through that classic time-honored tradition of watching their brother flat out bite the dust, while I dropped some dramatic vows over his still-cooling corpse. Not exactly prime material for a wholesome recruitment brochure. But hey, beggars really can't be choosers here. Elia tried her best to stop me from hunting down Vanderos all by myself. Sweet concern from the young lord, but terrible timing on all fronts. Night was crashing down fast, and under the cover of darkness, Vanderos and his 2 remaining roaches would definitely slip away, leaving me to spend the rest of my days constantly checking over my shoulder for a backstab. This showdown was happening right now, so I dropped my bow, whipped out my broadsword, and marched straight toward that boulder. Spotting me marching up without any ranged weapons in hand, Vanderos practically popped off with pure joy. You actually dare to fight me in close quarters? I'll split you right in half, he roared, launching himself straight into the sky. That seemed to be his signature power move. An aerial overhead chop, coupled with a brutal downward slash, crashing down hard like a literal meteor made of solid steel. The guy packed a serious punch, even when I deflected with a spin guard. The sheer impact rattled my entire skeleton and sent violent shockwaves straight through my internal organs. Warm blood trickled from the corner of my mouth, and my left arm went completely dead. Yet overpowering him wasn't the objective here. Outlasting him was the only way to win. Every single time he hurled that massive 2-handed greatsword around, with full technical force, he burned through stamina like a bonfire devouring a piece of paper. I kept weaving away using my rapid spinning footwork, parrying whatever I couldn't dodge, and stepping in close before instantly retreating again, never giving him a breathing second or handing him a clean strike. Basically playing the most annoying game of tag in medieval history. After 20 heavy swings, every fiber of my body was screaming in agony, internal bleeding spreading rapidly with ribs likely fractured, when suddenly a system notification flashed. Those earlier bandit kills had finally pushed me up to level 3, granting me 1 fresh attribute point. I dumped it right into Constitution mid-fight, feeling like I had just chugged a potent healing potion. A wave of warm energy flooded straight into my veins, causing all my injuries to knit themselves back together in real time. Vanderos remained completely oblivious to the change, too busy wheezing and gasping for oxygen. 25 heavy slashes later, his arms were visibly shaking. His leaps grew shorter, and his swordplay turned sloppy. The absolute monster who had been ragdolling Gerhard around like a toy had degraded into a sweaty, wheezing mess who could barely lift his own weapon. I delivered a decisive whirlwind slash with my whole body, spinning like a razor-sharp cyclone blade, to carve a flawless arc right through his exposed throat. He froze in place for a brief moment, his eyes bulging wide open with sheer disbelief, his mouth moving as I easily read his final words. "You had another combat technique hidden up your sleeve?" 3 master techniques coming from a broke 14-year-old kid he originally tried to shake down over a cup of rum. Witnessing that expression of pure, dying shock felt infinitely more satisfying than finding a hoard of gold coins. His 2 surviving bandits panicked and bolted the exact second he dropped, though I tracked them down in 3 seconds flat. Both dropped to their knees, begging for mercy. "Vandero forced us into this. We had no choice." "Where's your secret hideout?" "Eagle Beak Valley." "It's Eagle Beak Valley," the first one blurted out in panic. "I'll guide you there myself. It's only 5 miles away," the second bandit offered eagerly. My gaze shifted to the second guy. "Too bad. Your answer came way too late." 1 clean slash later, the surviving outlaw turned completely ghost white, looking like he was about to fade away into thin air. Belts stripped off dead bodies were used by me to tie him up securely. While Alia kept a sharp lookout, Eric handled the bindings, carrying out my commands with total efficiency, as if this was something they'd done their whole lives. Standing right there in that valley, surrounded by corpses, fresh blood drying on my blade, 2 fresh recruits at my flank, and a shaking prisoner sitting in my boots, I took a moment to assess everything. A death trap meant to take me out had just been walked right into. Every single guy who planned it was wiped out. My first party members were recruited, and a level was gained. A second family's combat manual and breathing technique were inherited, along with their fighting guide. Plus, a prime bandit stronghold was successfully pinned down for raiding. Not a bad way to wrap up an afternoon. That kicked off with 2 arrows flying straight for my head. So, Alia dropped the ultimate plot twist of the week on me, while I was still busy wiping blood off my jawline. Turns out her grandfather used to be a sworn guardian, knight belonging to my family, the Collinses. The Wind Dragons had taken him in as a slave, and trained him up into a full-fledged knight, before he died fighting side by side with my grandpa, out on the bloody plateau 3 decades ago, when my whole family got stripped of everything they owned. The Barton family lost their knight's land right along with us, and spiraled straight down into the same poverty trap we did, 30 years later. Even after all that, they still viewed themselves as our loyal vassals. Her brother Gerhard had recognized my family name with his dying breath, looking way happier about that than about, actually staying alive, which really put my own problems into a crazy perspective. Here was an entire family that lost everything, simply because of their unwavering loyalty to my bloodline. And their last 2 surviving members were kneeling right now, inside a blood-soaked valley, to swear allegiance to a broke 14-year-old, wearing stolen clothes. So honestly, this was either the most beautiful loyalty I had ever witnessed, or the most tragically misplaced faith in human history. Probably a solid mix of both. I went ahead and ran the traditional knighting ceremony, straight out of the original Hog's memories, tapping their shoulders gently with my broadsword, and reciting some dramatic lines about fighting shoulder to shoulder. Peak medieval theater right there, since this world completely runs on ceremony. Quite unlike my old world, which operated entirely on legal contracts and handshakes. And if I was destined to be a lord one day, I might as well start looking the part. The kidnapped merchant's son was still breathing, stuffed away inside a sack across the horse, looking like a wildly expensive piece of luggage. Half conscious, completely confused, and totally terrified, I assured him we were mercenaries hired out by his dad, while leaving out the awkward part where his rescue mission was actually a setup orchestrated by the exact same guy who had likely kidnapped him in the first place. Some details are just better left unsaid to avoid giving people nightmares. Amidst the maple forest, Eric and Alia laid Gerhard to rest, carrying themselves with striking poise. Sure, the tears were there, yet they held it together like seasoned pros, who had already witnessed their whole universe crash down. Over and over again, total trauma survivors. Soft vows echoed softly at his burial site, concerning my protection and the revival of their family legacy, before rising, wiping their faces clean, and diving straight back into the grind while down the line. I was stripping every single corpse across the valley, acting like a walking, talking recycling facility, snagging cash, blades, belts, pretty much anything of value. Vander and his crew were bound to feed the local wolves tonight. Just a circle of life, you know? The return trek to our concealed cart took twice the usual time. Through the pitch black, even under decent moonlight, our little makeshift caravan looked downright absurd, with Eric spearheading security, brandishing a sword, Aaliyah towing a horse loaded down with fallen fighters' gear, me playing escort to a bound-up bandit, plus a completely freaked-out merchant's kid, hugging my shadow tight like a lost baby duckling, hood drawn right over the scariest entity in the entire valley. The wagon driver nearly passed out cold upon spotting us approaching. "Where's Captain Vander?" "Gone. Every last one of them, except us." He let out the heavy sigh of a veteran teamster, who had carted way too many green adventurers into the wild, fully aware that most never make it back alive, before shutting his mouth to tend the campfire instead. Pure professional apathy. I honestly had to respect it. Elia immediately went in a mothering mode over me, treating me like a VIP, soaking hardtack in warm water, adding extra seasoning to the dried meat, and shoving food into my hands before I could even ask. She felt a bit awkward through the whole process, obviously not used to playing the servant card, yet her intentions were completely genuine. And honestly, after weeks of sustaining myself entirely out of an inventory dimension pocket, while dodging threats in abandoned ruins, having someone actually care if my dinner was hot hit different, so I just let her spoil me. Eric stepped up to volunteer for the first watch shift, while I assigned a rescued merchant boy to second watch. Figured he might as well contribute something useful, instead of just sitting there shaking like a leaf, giving them strict instructions to wake me right before sunrise, since I still had a bandit hideout to clear out, snug beneath thick wool blankets that Aaliyah had thoughtfully tucked around my shoulders. I pulled up my floating character sheet in the dark. Level 3 now, Constitution sitting at 10, Intelligence remaining dead at 6. Evidently, massive brawls didn't make me any brainier. Just significantly tougher weapon stats had leveled up nicely too. Swords hitting 120, archery climbing to 112, alongside 20 unspent weapon points, piling up securely like a digital savings account. And right there under the party tab, 2 distinct names showed up, Eric and Aaliyah. My very first followers, my tiny squad of 2. Their system description stats were hilariously underwhelming. Camp follower Aaliyah and Swadino recruit Eric. Definitely not elite Dragon Knight material by any stretch, though every legend has to start somewhere, and at the very least, the system made it official. Their loyalty was legit AF. An 80 out of roughly 100 on the meter. Felt pretty rock solid, considering I'd only known these folks for about 6 hours max. The major plot twist was realizing that, dropping that single constitution point, right in the heat of the brawl with Fondero, didn't just refill my stamina bar. It actually patched up my internal damage entirely. By daybreak, those 25 brutal slash wounds had practically healed themselves. That blew my mind because it implied stat points weren't just boring passive upgrades. They were total cheat code health potions you could chug right mid-combat. Mental note permanently etched into my brain. Always keep at least 1 point in reserve for tight spots. Past me dumping all 4 points at once in a wolf cave was a total clown move, while present me was slightly less clueless. Frosty, gray dawn light filtered through the air, and I woke up, feeling surprisingly recharged. For the very first time since landing in this wild realm. Fed, patched up and well-rested, with 2 fiercely loyal followers right by my side, who addressed me as young lord with absolute deadpan sincerity. The bandit hideout over at Eaglebeak Valley sat 5 miles out, bound to be packed with stolen loot, maybe extra prisoners, and guaranteed a ton of sweet experience points, just waiting to be farmed. I freed the captive bandit's legs from the ropes, leaving his hands securely tied, before instructing Eric and Alia to hold down the fort at camp. They immediately pushed back. Alia especially looked like she was itching for an argument, yet I wasn't about to gamble my only 2 party members on a sketchy cave-clearing run, when I had zero clue what waited inside. Besides, if that hideout was stuffed with amateur thugs, similar to the clowns I just plowed through down in the valley, this mission was practically a quick grocery run. Slip in, grab the loot. Slip out because the universe definitely owed me an easy morning after my crazy week. Ultimately, I left my 2 fresh recruits back at the campsite, since stranding Aaliyah alone, with a shady car driver and a wagon loaded with stolen weaponry, was basically asking for disaster. She totally wanted Eric to tag along with me. Yet someone had to stand guard at camp, and a 16-year-old girl wouldn't scare off anyone. If that bulky driver decided to get entrepreneurial and run off with our hard-earned gear. Fun fact, I am 14 years old and, somehow, running a crew of people older than myself. System-boosted growth spurts had stretched me close to 6 feet tall, so at least I didn't look like a total kid. Bossing around teenagers, small wins, right? The bandit's stronghold tucked inside Eagle Beak Valley turned out to be genuinely intimidating in the worst possible way. Following 2 hours of rugged hiking through dense timberland led to a narrow canyon cut through by a rushing stream, which grew tighter and tighter until the towering cliffs nearly met overhead, carving out a natural tunnel so pitch black you couldn't even see your hand right in front of your face. If my enhanced eyesight hadn't kicked in, I would have walked face first straight into their hidden fortress wall, which completely blocked the passage. It was the ultimate bandit lair, totally invisible, heavily defensible, and an absolute nightmare to raid. To scout ahead, I forced my captive Frollo to walk as bait. He tried acting all cooperative, while low-key planning to scream for help. The exact moment he got close enough, just as the 2 sentries on the wall spotted him and let their guards down, I introduced them to my composite bow. Emerging from the shadows came 2 arrows, finding 2 throats, leaving 2 bodies, slumping silently behind the battlements. Frollo froze dead in his tracks, deeply regretting every single life choice that brought him to this canyon. Alongside an archer who literally never missed. Moving past the wall, the canyon wound into another dark, narrow stretch, where a 3rd hidden archer was perched in the cliffside. He caught sight of Frollo, started to wave hello, and caught an arrow right mid-greeting. By this point, my kill-to-arrow ratio was reaching absolute perfection, and my legendary status among dead sentries was secure. Then the tunnel opened up, leaving my jaw on the floor. Hiding behind all that claustrophobic darkness was a secret paradise, a 2-kilometer oval valley, featuring a waterfall cascading from the northern mountains, a river winding through the bottom, and 100 acres of wheat fields, blanketing the valley floor. Stone houses climbed up a hillside, topped off by a 2-story stone tower. It was a fully self-sustaining settlement, tucked away inside a mountain, complete with working farmland and solid architecture. Frankly, these bandits had better real estate than most legitimate nobles I'd ever met. Around 20 ragged slaves worked the fields in absolute tattered clothes, looking like living scarecrows who had completely given up on life. They scattered into the trees. The 2nd Frollo started screaming out, "Enemy attack! 3rd boss, save me!" He yelled as he sprinted toward the stone tower, in one last desperate bid for survival. Unfortunately for him, he miscalculated my range. 1 arrow planted in his back brought Frollo's sprinting career to a permanent end. The whole valley fell dead silent. The stone tower showed no movement. The houses showed no movement. And there I was, standing at the canyon mouth like a total clown, with 0 cover in a wide-open valley, completely exposed to anyone stationed on that hilltop. It was a tactical nightmare, so I strapped on my arm shield, drew my sword, and marched straight up the stone path toward the tower, seeing as subtlety had officially left the building. About 4 dead centuries ago, whoosh, a javelin launched out of the tower doorway, flying straight at my face. This wasn't some clumsy throw by an amateur. It was hurled by someone who had completely mastered advanced javelin combat technique. The sheer speed and pinpoint accuracy were terrifying. Their 3rd boss was a certified pro. My arm shield just barely saved my skull. Pushing the projectile off to the side, I kept sprinting forward without missing a beat. Suddenly, a trio of javelins came hurtling out into the open. They fired off back-to-back in rapid-fire succession, going bang, bang, bang. Every single one slammed in my heavy shield with enough force to rattle my molars. Suddenly, a trio of javelins came hurtling out into the open, bursting right through the entryway. I was instantly blindsided by a pair of bandits waiting on both flanks. A swift whirlwind slash took care of the first attacker immediately. His throat was wide open before he could even wrap up his swing. Meanwhile, my raised shield batted the 2nd adversary's blade safely away. Right after that, another javelin targeted my neck. shooting straight out from the interior of the building as I wrenched my torso into what definitely looked like a circus contortionist, having a full-blown seizure, managing to dodge by literally mere millimeters. A razor-thin line of blood was carved across my throat by the spearhead, burning intensely like fire. Shift that path 1 inch to the left, and this whole tail would have wrapped up nicely with. And then Hog's head just popped right off. Closing the distance rapidly, I reached the javelin boss before he could grab another weapon. Up close and personal, his actual melee skills were downright pathetic. All of his raw talent was strictly poured into ranged throwing, not close-quarters combat, so my broadsword settled the argument in a hurry. Screaming at the top of his lungs, the final bandit bolted out through the door. My sword vanished instantly back into inventory. A composite bow materialized in my grip, and an arrow flew straight out. The fleeing bandit tumbled head over heels down the hillside routine. Reaching up right then, I brushed my fingers against the gash on my neck and pulled them away covered in bright crimson. That specialized javelin thrower had gotten way closer to ending my life than Vandero's ever managed. Note to self, never ever sleep on a guy whose whole entire tactical playbook is just hucking sharp pointy objects really fast right at people's faces. Standing tall atop the hilltop, surveying my freshly conquered little bandit sanctuary, I bellowed commands for the slaves, hiding out in the tree lean to finally step forward. Creeping over slowly, they collapsed right down on my boots, forming a shivering, kneeling mass defined by pure malnutrition and trauma. There were 22 human beings standing there, looking like they hadn't tasted a decent meal or put on untattered clothing for years. The bandits are dead, and you guys belong to me now. It wasn't exactly a liberating speech that would end up featured in history textbooks, but this brutal world ran entirely on ownership anyway. These poor folks were treated like property. The thugs owned them previously, and now I held the reins. It's a messed up system, but under my new management, they would at least eat actual food, and probably wouldn't get beaten purely for entertainment. That's a low bar to clear, yet it was still way higher than the conditions they had endured. So there I stood, a 14-year-old kid rocking a bleeding neck, a magical inventory packed with dead guys, stolen wallets, and a freshly acquired farming community, tucked away deep inside a mountain complete with rolling wheat fields, sturdy stone buildings, a protective perimeter wall, and 22 terrified slaves shaking in their boots, going from dying of cancer while grinding video games to becoming a medieval feudal lord took about 3 weeks flat. Life hits you fast in the face when you are rolling with a cheat system and absolutely zero chill. 22 frightened scarecrows were kneeling right in front of me, deep inside a hidden mountain paradise, making me a certified slave owner prior to my 15th birthday. Truly an unconventional career path. Never in either of my lives could I have pictured this. Yet somehow this realm kept serving up wild amounts of moral dilemmas right in the middle of brutal sword fights. A deeply permanent slave system ruled this entire region, featuring magic ink tattooed straight into the neck and coiled tightly around the carotid artery, so deeply embedded that attempting to erase it guaranteed a fatal hemorrhage. 11 individuals from my new crew sported that gorgeous neck accessory, while the remainder consisted of kidnapped villagers, shanghaied into grueling farm labor. Every single one of them looked like they'd been fueled purely by spite, and whatever table scraps came their way. Straight up, I offered them a deal that probably sounded too good to be legit. Stick with me to get properly fed, dressed, and drilled in combat, with a real shot at picking up night-tier abilities, or take 3 days' worth of rations and walk away a free person, in a harsh reality where freedom for a homeless peasant meant perishing in a ditch from starvation, or getting dragged right back into chains as somebody else's property. This proposition felt less like a choice and more like a basic IQ test. Instantly, one of the slave laborers perked right up, reacting just like a puppy hearing a treat bag rustle. Even slaves can learn night-tier techniques. The sheer desperation echoing in his voice genuinely hurt my soul. I confirmed it, and he pledged his loyalty with lightning speed, shattered speed records in the process. My system interface pinged 3 times in quick succession. Iron, Bandak hailing from the Doro Empire, and Nick of the Deck Empire all cleared the minimum loyalty threshold and officially joined my party. 5 total slots, 5 fully packed. My invisible army was at max capacity, and honestly, I had zero clue how to upgrade that limit yet. Meanwhile, 8 folks chose to bounce, mostly being kidnapped villagers who had families waiting back home. I hooked them up with supplies and had Iron escort them safely out. 3 women with nowhere left to turn decided to stay behind, including 2 who had served as the bandit leader's personal playthings. Their hollow expressions silently narrated horrors I refused to pry into. 5 farm women remained when all was said and done, with 2 of them possessing instant cooking skills, making them easily the most valuable assets in this entire valley, at least as far as my stomach cared. The hidden base itself was an absolute goldmine. Down in the underground cellar, we struck jackpot supplies. Plenty of wheat, barley, oats, and salt to sustain everyone for a solid quarter year. The armory was stocked with 10 swords, 3 hunting bows, a pair of spears, 12 quivers, and 6 javelins ready for deployment. Upstairs in the boss's personal study, I uncovered the crown jewel, a copper-plated half-body armor set, featuring a cotton lining that happened to fit my frame like a glove. It was a massive glow-up from Mars's blood-crusted leather bathrobe that I'd been stuck wearing since week 1. Tucked away in the corner, a weathered leather pouch held 30 shiny gold coins, meaning the bandit's retirement fund had just transformed into my brand-new operating budget. 78 gold pieces total, climbing all the way from 10 copper to 78 gold within roughly 3 weeks. If my old world had a financial advisor specializing in Category 4 murder and armed looting, I would have easily bagged Employee of the Month. Iron was promptly appointed as our base commander, with Bandak and Nick stepping up as his trusted seconds-in-command. Each member of this core squad had already drilled at least one basic skill, weapon mastery being the plan. The remaining slaves were handed over to them for training, with spear drills, archery, and axe combat assigned respectively. Armaments were distributed right after, followed by strict orders to ration their food supplies wisely, fortify the perimeter wall, and clear away the leftover bandit corpses to spruce up the property. These executive choices, as an aspiring feudal lord, were doled out to a crew of undernourished ex-slaves, standing amid a sea of golden wheat, deep inside a hidden mountain basin. Any business school would have totally flexed over that. The journey back was a breeze, featuring a single overnight stop at a village, and hitting Black Rock City by noon the next day. Snorty, the rescued merchant's kid, had figured out along the way that I was the one pulling all the strings, despite looking like everybody's younger sibling, giving me a bow upon arrival so ridiculously deep. I honestly thought he'd faceplant, splitting up to maximize efficiency. I dragged Snorty to cash in the rescue bounty at the Adventurers Guild, while Alia and Eric offloaded our surplus gear at the neighboring blacksmith. The guild clerk processed the quest paperwork without a single peep about Vandero's missing in action. Headcounts are never really stressed in this line of work. 50 gold coins were handed right over to me upon completion, right as Old Man Hint started bawling over his recovered kid, as if it were the season finale of a melodrama. I just stood there awkwardly, soaking up praise for a rescue mission that technically just happened as a side effect of me wiping out the guys who tried to flatline me first. 38 gold pieces were raked in from Alia's weapons sale, after she and Eric had smartly kept the prime equipment for themselves. Crisp new swords, bows, and every single arrow in stock. The cart driver was paid his single gold coin rental fee, then watched as he vanished down the road without looking back. Smart dude. Knowing better than to pry about missing passengers. A quiet back street and was soon secured, where 2 rooms were booked, me bunking with Eric, and Elia getting her own space, so I could finally sit down and crunch the numbers that actually mattered. After totaling everything up and handing 7 gold to my crew so they could buy fresh clothes, because they honestly looked like medieval apocalypse survivors, my bank account was sitting pretty, at way past 100 gold coins. The knight's exam ran 10 gold, and the land permit was another 50, meaning both could be covered easily with cash to spare. Tomorrow would involve walking into the Knights Guild, proving I was way more than just a scrawny nobody, securing my official certification, and taking that crucial first real leap toward restoring the Wind Dragon legacy. After that, we'd head straight back to Eaglebeak Valley, my secret mountain hideout equipped with farmland, a fortress, and a miniature army of trainees, who were probably at that very second try to figure out which end of the spear was the pointy one. Only 3 weeks ago, my life ended while playing a video game. Yet here I was now, with followers calling me Young Lord. A hidden mountain fortress, nearly 100 gold coins in my pocket, and combat moves lethal enough to take down veteran bandits. The original Hog spent his entire. All he ever wanted was to restore his family name. While right then and there, I found myself accidentally speed running his impossible dream. Between low-key craving instant noodles, Eagle Beak Valley was brought up in a chat with Aaliyah and Eric, detailing the secret mountain fortress, the farmlands, and the slaves-turned-trainees, as every single detail was laid out before them. Their eyes popped wide open like kids hearing great news. Except this party featured a hidden bandit lair. Annoncé d'Indenture Agriculture. Logistics mode was instantly activated by Aaliyah, who mapped out supply purchases like a medieval quartermaster. Organization was clearly her calling in life. Shopping duty for the next day was assigned to them by me, while the night certification exam was handled on my end. It was a super clean and simple plan, though life's plans never actually survive contact with reality. Stepping out of the inn, we literally walked straight into a wall of city guards, alongside a Crow Gang district boss, who pointed his grubby finger right at me, plus a genuine knight perched upon a warhorse, looking down at us like we were bugs at a picnic. Fadrukoba stood there as the South District security chief, an actual real knight packing blood energy, and everything else while his booming voice hit my chest, with the sheer impact of a sudden thunderclap, due to the fact that he had pumped supernatural power straight into his vocal cords. What a total show-off as the Crow Gang boss beside him was practically vibrating with smug satisfaction, having apparently bought this little arrest, using 50 gold coins and years of regular bribes. Talk about justice for sale, medieval edition. Did you do it? Feder boomed aloud. Lying was an option I considered for a second, though lying to a knight backed by 40 guards felt counterproductive. Yes, but I'm completely not guilty. They attacked a noble first, namely Hog Kalinsa, of the Wind Dragon family. My family crest was quickly whipped out like a medieval badge, flaunting mithril that gleamed brightly in the sunlight. The Crow boss nearly tripped over his own feet. While rushing to counter, he is just a broke noble, holding 0 land or any title worth respecting. He left 20 dead bodies behind, your honor. 20. Fedra thought about it for roughly 2 seconds, while weighing his annual Crow Gang bribe income against the absolute headache of dealing with a penniless aristocrat, before barking, "Take him away," as if I had personally insulted his mother. Compliance was my choice, since fighting a real knight would have been total suicide, served with a side of extreme stupidity. Aaliyah and Eric were whispered instructions to stay calm and stay put, letting the guards drag me off afterward to a lovely, underground dungeon that smelled strongly of pure despair, and suffered from a severe mold problem while my broadsword was confiscated, though everything else remained safely tucked inside my invisible inventory, where no medieval pat-down could ever discover it. Sitting alone in that damp cell, I will admit I was worried, though definitely not panicking, having been through worse situations, yet deeply concerned that my brilliant strategy, consisting of revealing my noble status and walking free, had completely face-planted in spectacular fashion, all thanks to the Crow Gang and this corrupt knight, gotten tightly trapped, just like a permanent golden band. While sitting down there in that damp, mold-ridden dungeon, a massive political earthquake had actually been set off upstairs because of my arrest. You see, being the final surviving heir of an original founding Duke household comes with a catch. Even if you're completely broke and living on the streets, certain major players will still keep a close eye on whether you're breathing or not. Not because they genuinely give a damn, no, but simply because letting you get iced brings serious headaches for whoever pulls it off come sunrise. A massively hefty and highly influential dude named Phillips Buffet, who happens to be the city's main administrator and the current lord's uncle, came waddling straight into the security station with such frantic speed that he was wheezing heavily, nearly causing Phaedru to snap his own spine in half. From bowing so low as he blurted out, "Is that Colinso kid still kicking?" Phillips gasped out loud, wearing the absolute expression of a guy who just figured out he accidentally stepped dead center on a live landmine. It turns out that certain high-rolling factions in the Empire wanted the legendary Wind Dragon bloodline to just fade away quietly, dying in a random monster scrap, totally fine, starving slowly out in some ditch, completely acceptable, getting publicly executed by the security chief of the Wind Eagle family itself. Catastrophically bad news. Not good at all. That blunder would hand rival noble houses the ultimate excuse to brand the entire Buffet household as cold-blooded assassins of an ancient founding lineage, and completely ruin them politically. Phaedru had practically handed their worst enemies a loaded crossbow pointed right at his own family's chest. Phillips didn't even start screaming because he didn't have to. He simply broke it down with the terrifying calmness of a guy, walking you through the exact steps of how you nearly blew up the whole operation, pointing out that the Crow gang had acted like a cancerous tumor on the city for far too long, and that laying a finger on any noble, even a broke one, was a strict capital offense under imperial law, meaning it was prime time to use that exact excuse to wipe out every single Crow across all 4 city districts all at once. Phaedrew, who literally 5 minutes prior was mapping out my public hanging, shifted gears into full-blown enthusiastic teamwork, way faster than a weather vane spinning in a hurricane. I'll have him released right this second, sir. No, dear Phaedrew. We're going to play this smart, Phillips declared, flashing that classic politician's knack for turning total disasters into golden opportunities by framing my imprisonment as a calculated move, meant to lull the entire Crow gang into a false sense of security, while the authorities coordinated a massive surprise strike. My cell time wasn't a punishment at all. It was frontline bait, and for playing along with the scheme, the city would compensate him with 10 gold coins. While I was down there in that dungeon, stressed out of my mind, chewing on invisible system menu bread and wondering if my 2 loyal followers were holding up okay. The entire syndicate of the Crow gang, which had been terrorizing the outer slums of Black Rock City for ages, was being completely rounded up, stripped of all assets, and judged harshly, with top bosses getting executed and regular thugs sold off into slavery, finishing off the very gang that had hunted me down through the back alleys, scouting every bakery just to track me down, and paying off a night to string me up. My entire existence was practically being wiped out, just because they happened to pick the wrong scrawny teen to mess with. Talk about a low-key hilarious cosmic joke. Those first 2 Crow syndicate thugs, who trapped me in a sketchy alleyway over a couple of gold pieces, had accidentally kicked off a total domino effect that would completely dismantle their whole operation, get their local district boss iced, cost their secret head honcho his actual head, and rob a shady knight of his sweetest cash flow, all because they stared at an underfed 14-year-old and figured it was a free win in this twisted world, carrying the final drops of a legendary bloodline. Turn out to be both the absolute worst and best insurance policy ever. Everybody low-key wanted me gone, yet no one could risk being the one caught doing the deed. I was basically a rare endangered species that people kept accidentally trying to poach. 10 gold coins for spending a single night locked up, while the city basically did all my dirty work for free. I would have gladly stayed a whole week for that deal. Stepping out of the sterile security office, I clutched 10 heavy gold coins that a visibly shaken knight had practically forced into my palms, while spinning the most mind-bogglingly rewritten version of recent events I had ever heard straight from Officer Phaedrew. Under Drew's fresh and improved lore, I was never actually locked up at all. Nope, absolutely not. I was just tactically detained for a genius, citywide sting operation to wipe out the Crow crew. My cell time was just top-tier bait. I was a legit hero cooperating with local law enforcement. So here is 10 gold for your trouble, kid. Please don't spill the tea on how I almost hung you yesterday. The exact same guy who had thundered take him away, using some supernatural speaker-blasting voice, was now grinning at me like we were besties, reuniting at an exclusive dinner party. Politicians in every single dimension are the exact same breed. Out on the streets, absolute madness was unfolding. Progink affiliates. Hundreds of them were being hauled out of buildings, chained together in massive lines, and marched straight toward the Slave Merchants Guild to get slapped with that sweet magical neck tattoo they'd spent years branding everyone else with. Every single district got hit simultaneously. The syndicate that had terrorized the city's underdogs for years was getting gutted in a single morning, all because they made the galaxy brain executive decision to mug a random orphan teenager who happened to be the final heir of a founding imperial dynasty. I still didn't entirely vibe with why I got sprung. Phaedrew seriously wanted me dead last night, though something flipped between sundown and sunrise, and that something totally reeked of high-level politics, way above a local security chief's pay grade. Whatever shadow chess game was being played out, with my actual life as a pawn, I hated every second of it. Time to level up fast, grab some land even faster, and stop being a throwaway piece on someone else's board. Alia and Eric were waiting for me, standing right outside the inn, though definitely not our old one, since that spineless coward of an innkeeper had given them the boot. The exact second I got slapped in cuffs, they had crashed at a different spot for the night and drifted back here in hopes I'd magically reappear. Seeing that wave of pure relief wash across their faces when I walked up safe and sound honestly almost made that miserable dungeon stay totally worth it. Well, almost. That holding cell still smelled like absolute trash. 20 shiny gold coins were slipped right into their hands, which I secretly fished out of my invisible inventory, while putting on a show of rummaging through my belt pouch, before sending them off on a major shopping spree for matching leather armor, along with healing salves and plenty of food supplies. Basically, everything we could possibly need for a long haul at Eaglebeak Valley. My personal gold stash was sitting pretty at 118 coins, even after footing that entire shopping bill, going from 10 measly copper pieces to triple digits in under a month, shifting from a cancer-ridden video game addict straight into a medieval venture capitalist. What a wild character arc. Stepping inside, the Knights Guild totally blew past my wildest expectations, featuring marble floors so intensely polished I could practically check my hair, while epic murals of historic showdowns wrapped completely around every wall, surrounded by an aura of serious prestige and authority that made the regular adventurers guild look like some sketchy roadside taco stand. This was absolute high-tier territory where the heavy hitters registered. It took a 10 gold entry fee, plus filling out paperwork with your entire life story and background, before heading straight out to the testing yard. The physical assessment was an absolute joke, requiring you to hoist a massive 200-pound stone block above your head, which I basically just tossed like a feather, followed by showing off a quick combat technique. I opted for simple archery since whipping out whirlwind slash would have given away way too many secret tricks. After sending a few arrows downrange, the proctor just nodded and called it good. Next came the induction ceremony, and I'll totally own up to it. Even my cynical, live 2 lifetimes soul got a little bit emotional. They escorted me upstairs into a cavernous grand hall, which was completely dominated by a towering statue of Caesar Glenn, the legendary Sky Knight himself, who spearheaded humanity's massive rebellion against the brutal Orc Empire, shattered the chains of the enslaved human populace, and ultimately established the 3 great empires. He stands as the greatest knight to ever walk history, despite never even coming from noble blood, relying purely on raw skill, unmatched guts, and a stubborn refusal to ever stay defeated. He was also the mastermind behind the Knights Guild, built on a radical concept that literally anyone, even the lowest slaves, should have access to advanced breathing techniques and elite combat arts, a genuinely breathtaking vision that today's modern society completely sold out by locking all that sacred knowledge away behind heavily guarded aristocratic doors. A sleek, silver-armored knight stood guard right next to a gleaming white jade monument, featuring 5 carved words: loyalty, protection, honor, courage, and responsibility. Pressing my fist firmly against my chest, I recited the sacred knight's oath out loud, swearing absolute loyalty unto death and keeping honor above mere survival, ready to march straight into the depths of hell for true justice. Those were dangerously heavy words for a guy who was literally eating stolen crusts of bread, hiding out in some abandoned military barracks just 2 weeks ago. Yet I meant every single syllable of it, leaving aside the rotten system running things right now. It was all for the ideal that Caesar Glenn had originally envisioned. Congrats on leveling up, Hog Kalensa. You're officially an apprentice knight now. They handed me a crisp parchment certificate, alongside a heavy iron badge stamped with insignia, featuring a sword, lance, and warhorse up front, and my full legal name engraved on the back. Totally legit. The system pinged with an update right then and there, leaving me low-key, losing my mind with pure hype. My squad limit had just shot up from 5 straight to 15. This wasn't from grinding levels, but from my status upgrade. The interface scaled my army capacity dynamically, based on my new social standing and official rank, stepping up to a certified apprentice knight. Triple my command slots overnight, no cap, implying that ranking up to a full knight would blow that limit wide open, and becoming a titled baron with actual land? Those numbers would be insane. This completely changes the game, because 15 isn't just a bigger digit. It's the exact threshold between just a guy with a couple followers and a commander rolling with an actual squad. Back at Eaglebeak Valley, Iron Bandak and Nick were already taking up 2 of my slots, with Aaliyah and Eric filling the rest, leaving 10 openings open. That meant 10 fresh recruits I could bind with system loyalty, drill in advanced combat techniques, and forge into a legitimate fighting force. Walking on air, I practically glided to the mercenary guild next. To get my registration sorted there too, since mercenary contracts pushed way better payouts than basic adventure gigs, and I needed to stack every single coin I could get my hands on. Soon after, I met back up with my two companions, who had traded their ragged refugee looks for proper, well-equipped fighter gear, fresh leather armor, sharp weapons, plenty of supplies, and a sturdy pack horse, loaded down with provisions for a mountain hideout. With 108 gold coins left in my pouch, a fresh knight certification in my pocket, a hidden valley fortress waiting for my return, and 15 empty party slots craving new recruits. Somewhere out there in this vast empire, powerful figures were low-key wishing I would just kick the bucket in some totally deniable and convenient accident, while making sure their own hands stayed completely clean of the actual blade work. Hate to break it to you, shadowy imperial masterminds, this particular walking target happened to pack a cheat system, en overpowered dragon breeding technique, and a checklist featuring an army build and a kingdom conquest. Your move, guys. Fresh out of the slammer, with 10 gold coins jingling away in my pocket, I had 2 final errands to knock out in Black Rock City before getting the heck out of Dodge. Knight certification and mercenary guild registration. I'd already knocked out the knight badge yesterday, leaving today wide open for mercenary business. Though first, I took a glance at what it takes to hit mid-level apprentice knight and instantly regretted looking. Overhead press, 600 pounds, no big deal. Okay, I was actually getting close to that milestone. But on top of that, I had to pull off a mounted combat drill using a polearm, which basically meant I needed to learn to fight from a saddle. So basically, I needed a real steed instead of a pathetic pack mule. A legitimate warhorse fully conditioned for brutal combat. Even the cheapest, decent warhorse was way out of my budget compared to everything I owned. While those legendary Dora warhorses, genetically mixed with genuine dragon blood, were smart enough to read an entire battlefield, and fearless enough to charge straight at a massive monster, cost hundreds of gold pieces each. Rumor has it my family once deployed 1,000 heavy cavalry units, consisting of knights outfitted in 100-pound plated armor, riding on fully armored warhorses, acting as 1,000 medieval tanks, and somehow, this unstoppable war machine of a bloodline still left me as its only surviving heir, hiding out in damp bandit caves while haggling aggressively over bread prices. The more dark historical facts I uncovered about the Kalinsa glory days, the more my current depressing reality hit me hard. Since the Mercenary Guild was located in North City, it meant I practically had to jog across the entire sprawling metropolis. Though the exhausting trek was totally worth it because the Mercenary Guild made the Adventurers Guild look like a flimsy lemonade stand, sitting right outside a 5-star luxury restaurant. Massive stone architecture defined the building while the heavy atmosphere buzzed with the quiet confidence of hardened killers. And surprisingly, the lobby even offered complimentary rum. Proper top-shelf rum, not that cheap swill served in village taverns. While common adventurers were forced to deal with splinter-filled wooden counters and grumpy bored clerks, mercenaries enjoyed polished halls, along with private privacy screens between tables, and my eyes instantly locked onto a gorgeous, blonde receptionist whose professional smile could easily disarm a wildly charging orc. After reviewing my official certification papers carefully, she glanced up at my face before looking right back down at the documents. You're 14. Yes, ma'am, 14. Featuring 3 advanced combat techniques, a dragon breathing method, and an invisible pocket dimension, crammed with stolen wallets belonging to dead guys. I'll just offer a modest nod. Already an apprentice knight at such a young age? I bet you'll grow up to become a legendary mercenary someday, with the entire continent telling epic stories about your deeds. She beamed proudly, looking just like a proud Anne at a school play. I put on my best humble shock impression outwardly, while internally screaming with pure, unadulterated joy. She handed me a shiny copper identity tag, marking me as a rookie mercenary of the lowest rank, alongside a rulebook known as the Mercenary Code. Apparently, this badge gave me clearance to accept contracts across all 3 major human empires where finishing missions successfully would rack up points toward high-tier rank upgrades, complete with increasingly fancy perks. The classic mercenary career path. Get paid to fight, fight to earn promotions, and get promoted so you can battle deadlier threats for massive paychecks. It's brutally simple, wonderfully elegant, and statistically fatal for most participants. When I finally checked out the job board, those astronomical gold numbers nearly melted my eyeballs right out of my skull. These weren't some low-tier flower-picking gigs. A frontier baron located 500 miles to the east wanted aggressive packs of wolves cleared from his personal territory, offering 50 gold just for showing up, plus generous bonuses for every kill. Another distant baron 600 miles away needed an entire undead horde exterminated for a cool 500 gold, while a third lord was actively hiring 100 mercenaries to assist with a full year of dangerous frontier development. At 100 gold per head, the sheer payout was completely intoxicating, though the dangerous fine print was literally written in blood. Trudging 500 miles into the wasteland meant dealing with a region swarming with ruthless orcs, hideous monsters, goblins, and vile things that preyed on goblins, plus the undead. Basically a death wish without proper blood energy shielding, seeing as those corpses radiated a lethal aura that literally melted human flesh upon contact. Every single high-paying gig on that job board felt like a low-key dare from the cosmos. Want some cash? Come get yourself killed. Some buff mercenary sitting at an adjacent table tried to draft me into his wolf-hunting party, so I politely declined and power-walked right out. Teaming up with randoms had a foolproof 100% betrayal rate. Based on my past trauma, Von Darrow had hammered that brutal lesson home with a broadsword. I was officially done playing the clueless rookie who gets invited to the party, only to end up as the main course. My new game plan was refreshingly simple. Assemble my own squad, drill them with my personal techniques, and run contracts as an entirely self-contained unit. No more trusting, shady adventurers, or mercenary captains flashing suspiciously warm, fake smiles. Every single fighter covering my blind spot would be system verified, deeply loyal, and rigorously trained by yours truly. It would take longer to set up, but the payoff was huge. Zero chance of catching a straight arrow in my back. Alia and Eric had been buzzing around like busy little worker bees all day, so when I finally drifted back to the inn at dusk, they had checked off every single item on our shopping list, secured an extra pack horse, and even scored a rickety wooden cart to haul it all. We had 2 sets of leather armor, expensive healing salves that apparently cost more than solid gold toilets in this ridiculous medieval economy, plus enough grain and provisions to feed our hidden valley settlement for a good while. Over 20 gold coins had flat out evaporated in one single shopping trip, leaving poor Alia looking physically distressed as she braced herself to report the total expenses to me, seeing as her family's total net worth was a grand total of 3 coins. Watching 20 vanish in a single afternoon probably gave her mild heart palpitations. I just laughed it off, keeping a secret that my hidden inventory balance still boasted well over 100 gold pieces, meaning I was printing fresh income, faster than a modern printing press. The real investment wasn't the physical gear anyway. It was investing in the people wielding it. Every single coin poured into armor and combat training would return, multiplied tenfold, the moment my crew started tackling high-tier mercenary contracts. The next morning, we rolled straight out of Black Rock City using a janky wooden cart hitched to a pair of totally unenthusiastic mules, steering our route southward toward our secret mountain sanctuary. Left behind us was a chaotic city that had tried to arrest me, mug me, and hang me, only to turn around and apologize, all within the span of 1 month. Looming ahead of us was a hidden valley full of former slaves, currently learning which sharp end of a spear hurts most, a rapidly growing treasury of gold, and a tight deadline of roughly 8 months to whip this ragtag bunch of starving farmers into a legitimate fighting force before the Empire stripped away my family name for good. Just 1 day away from Eagle Beak Valley, my journey was underway. As we camped out in the woods, my system suddenly pinged right at dawn. It felt like the absolute worst alarm clock in existence. Brand new upgrade choices for Iron and Bandak had just popped up. Promoting each of them required just a single gold coin. They could transition from simple new recruits into legitimate military classes. Iron was eligible to become a Swadino militiaman. Meanwhile, Bandak was set to be a Doro hunter. This upgrade meant they would acquire genuine combat experience overnight. At the same time, it signaled that something was actively attacking my valley. My stomach instantly dropped into my shoes. Those folks I had generously let go with 3 days' worth of rations. had probably gotten ambushed and recaptured by bandits. Under torture, they undoubtedly leaked the location of the valley. My own goodwill had literally come back to haunt me. Was I actually about to start executing witnesses? Like some hardcore medieval warlord? Definitely not, though I did briefly cross that thought out. Okay, maybe I gave it half a second of thought. Deep down, I am fundamentally too soft for a brutal world like this. Strangely enough, that exact softness was what bought me iron and bandax. Unwavering loyalty in the first place. The karma sheet balanced itself out, I suppose. Without hesitation, I spent 2 gold coins to upgrade both guys instantly. Whatever mystical power boost the system was handing out, they're going to need it right now. Next, I finally did something I've been stalling on, showing off my hidden inventory ability. An entire cart load, filled with grain and supplies, was swept away, straight into my invisible storage space, leaving Alia and Eric staring with jaws dropped in absolute shock. An entire wagon loaded with wheat and rye literally went poof, vanishing right into my palm like a cheap magic trick, pulled off by a deeply stressed-out teenager. Nobody can ever find out about this trick. Elia just nodded solemnly in agreement, clearly jumping to the conclusion that I possessed some ultra-rare, wizard-crafted storage artifact. Truth be told, my storage space was vastly more overpowered than anything the wizards of this realm had ever managed to create. The most powerful wizard servant ever hired by the Kalinza family, on a device holding a mere 3 cubic meters of space. Meanwhile, mine swallowed an entire wagon of grain into just 2 inventory slots, neatly sorted by crop type. Even so, letting them keep their wizard theory was way easier than explaining interdimensional video game mechanics to medieval locals. So I kept my lips firmly sealed. We ditched the heavy cart, unhitched the 2 mules, and rode like the wind. I took one mule while Alia and Eric doubled up on the other. This was actually my first time riding an animal since the original guy only had theoretical riding lessons passed down by his dad. Fortunately, pack mules share the calm temperament of elderly librarians, so staying seated wasn't the main issue here. Pushing for speed from a creature whose top pace was a deeply reluctant trot. Now that was the real challenge. Back at Eagle Beak Valley during all this, my people were going through an absolute nightmare. A brutal bandit raid had struck just before dawn, featuring dozens of mass fighters, pouring directly into the narrow canyon passage. They were throwing themselves straight at the fortress walls, like angry ants swarming all over a picnic blanket. Iron spotted the incoming chaos during his watch shift, and the emergency warning was sounded right in the nick of time. Our 14 defenders were quickly organized into 3 separate squads by him. Holding down the top of the wall, alongside 5 spear-wielding fighters, was Iron himself, while Bandak and 2 archers provided heavy cover fire. And Nick took charge of the remaining crew to heavily barricade the gate against incoming battering rams. Just 14 malnourished former slaves, who only had 2 weeks of basic training under their belts, stood against a bloodthirsty little army of desperate bandits. The sheer numbers were terrifying, before his arms turned completely to dead weight. Iron managed to spear 6 climbing enemies. Bandak picked off another half-dozen targets before running totally dry, and having to grab a spear he barely knew how to handle, only to get nearly yanked right off the battlement. When a ruthless bandit grabbed his weapon, 2 of our slaves took direct arrow hits, and their blood-curdling screams sent the rest of the group into total panic. They huddled tightly behind anything sturdy they could find, far too paralyzed by fear to fight back as the heavy gate began to buckle. Corpses were piling high on both sides of the perimeter, yet the relentless wave of bandits kept surging forward. Iron and Bandak locked eyes in that universal expression which silently said, "Well, this was a fun ride while it lasted, huh?" 3 short days of eating actual proper meals and dreaming about a brighter future were about to be cut short on a blood-drenched wall, hidden deep inside a forgotten canyon nobody even knew existed. That was until I decided to level them up from 20 miles away. My personal system pummeled raw combat prowess straight into their exhausted bodies. Their overwhelming fatigue vanished instantly like morning mist under the sun. With their physical strength doubled, Iron Spear suddenly moved, as if it possessed a lethal mind of its own. Years of phantom muscle memory flooded straight into his arms, transforming simple stabs into fluid, highly efficient killing strokes. Attackers dropped off scaling ladders like overly ripe fruit falling from a tree, getting skewered cleanly before they could even let out a gasp. Bandak underwent a transformation that was even more insanely dramatic. His dormant hunter bloodline had finally awakened, or whatever crazy voodoo the system pulled off. Because his vision suddenly sharpened to an absurd degree, his reflexes soared into supernatural territory, and his arrows started hitting enemy throats dead center, with mechanical perfection. Whether a target was 5 paces away or 50, it made no difference because every single shot hit home. He might not have been at that elite sniper level, capable of shooting a fly from 100 paces away just yet. Though at close range, he was operating like an absolute meat grinder. The enemy morale finally broke. Those bandits had been effortlessly winning against a bunch of starving amateurs. Until suddenly, 2 of those exact same amateurs morphed right into mid-battle mini-bosses. Over 15 lifeless bodies of fallen raiders now littered the top of the wall and the muddy canyon floor below, forcing the terrified survivors to scramble backward into the dim shadows. As they tried to figure out what on earth had just hit them, what really happened was just a 14-year-old kid riding a mule, who spent 2 gold coins from 20 miles away, and completely turned the tide of an active siege remotely. This system of mine wasn't merely a selfish personal cheat code. It functioned as a massive command and control network, capable of upgrading frontline soldiers in real time, over massive distances. The strategic implications alone were enough to make my head spin. Every single gold coin poured into these tactical troop enhancements did far more than just boost one individual's stats. It held the raw potential to save an entire defensive stronghold, right at the exact microsecond it mattered most. Perhaps Iron and Bandak truly believed their elusive ruler wielded divine abilities, channeling sheer force through prayer and stubborn willpower. Letting that little rumor fester suited me just fine, since having a possible god for a boss does wonders for squad morale. Urging my stubborn mule onward, I still had 20 miles to cover. Some bandits needed cleaning up, and a vital valley required securing. My secret mountain base had barely survived its first real trial, escaping by the absolute skin of its teeth, and its continued existence was solely owed to my cheat system's total lack of respect for basic biology and the laws of distance. Acting as a remote access warlord, jogging an ancient mule through the dense forest at maximum waddle speed, while my garrison fought tooth and nail for survival. Wasn't exactly how I pictured commanding an army. Yet results were rolling in, and in this ruthless world, getting results was all that truly mattered. We finally rolled up on Eaglebeak Valley, stumbling right into a scene where 60-plus lowlifes were trying to smoke my people out like bees from a hive. Commanding them was a one-eyed brute, sporting a jagged scar across his empty socket, as if someone tried cleaving his skull and quit halfway through. He sat astride a warhorse so ridiculously massive, it resembled a regular animal that had been pumped exclusively with pure steroids and rage for a decade, standing over 2 meters tall at the shoulder. It was built like a tank, gripping a knight's lance in his fist, while flashing the calculating expression of a guy who had already mentally redecorated the interior of my valley's living quarters. His strategy was clever, credit where credit is due. The canyon tunnel naturally channeled the wind inward, meaning piled damp timber at the mouth and setting it ablaze would flood the entire corridor with thick, choking smoke. My defenders would be forced to abandon the barricades and face a slaughter out in the open, or simply suffocate behind them. It was textbook siege tactics coming from a guy with one eye, and apparently 2 functioning brain cells to rub together. Definitely a notch above your average bandit captain. Along the journey here, I'd accidentally discovered that living creatures fit inside my inventory. A casual brush against one of our pack mules made it instantly vanish, pulling off a magic trick, directed by someone who didn't even understand the craft. With Alia and Eric watching, their designated pack animal evaporated right under my palm, dropping their jaws so hard against the forest floor, they probably left structural dents. While everyone knew arcane storage artifacts were a real thing, those trinkets were strictly limited to lifeless objects. Absorbing an active, breathing creature was supposed to be physically impossible. Naturally, their loyalty meters spiked straight through the roof. Nothing inspires absolute devotion quite like watching your boss casually delete a living horse from existence. Surveying the battlefield, I quickly spotted my ideal sniper nest, a nearly sheer rock face situated across the river, featuring a protruding stone ledge, roughly 80 paces away from the raiders. It made for an unbeatable shooting platform. The rushing river completely cut off enemy infantry, The cliff was far too vertical for mortal scaling, and that gorgeous warhorse couldn't climb such a steep incline, even if its life depended on it. Raw geography was about to become my most lethal instrument. Just one catch. Hiding safely behind a rocky ridge on the inner curve of the road sat the one-eyed boss, totally obscured from my line of sight. Super annoying. Yet I still had plenty of other targets to stay occupied with. I began picking off the wood carriers one by one, acting like a twisted carnival game operator straight from hell. 5 dropped dead before they even realized where the arrows were flying from, until the one-eyed boss screamed out. Right slope, everyone hit the deck, and every single bandit kissed the dirt instantly. That was some low-key fast reaction time for a Cyclops, though it also meant that nobody was feeding those smoke fires anymore. The thick flames right at the tunnel mouth choked and died out. Inside, Iron and his crew had been holding their ground, with damp rags pressed tightly over their faces, tears streaming down and lungs burning from the smoke. When suddenly the thick smoke just faded away, they knew I was back in action. When I sent 6 rival archers scattering to suppress me, from 80 paces away, 5 of those guys couldn't even reach my elevated position. Their pathetic arrows floated up like exhausted butterflies and dropped uselessly right at my boots. It was basically free ammunition delivery for me. Only one guy had enough muscle to actually land shots anywhere near me, so I sniped him first and then picked off 3 more right after. The final 2 survivors decided that lying face down in the dirt was a much safer career choice than standing up to die, and right then came the heavy shield wall push. Bandits holding tower shields in front, while swordsmen marched behind, climbing my slope step by cautious step. At 10 paces out, arrows became completely useless against those upward-angled shields. They were close enough that I could literally hear them breathing heavily and smell their arrogant, unwashed confidence hanging in the air. Right at that exact moment, my system flashed upgrades for both Elia and Eric, costing 1 gold each, and I mentally smashed the yes button so hard. I'm honestly surprised the system didn't file a noise complaint. Raw power flooded directly through Elia's entire body. Her strength doubled instantly as years of hidden archery and sword training got downloaded straight into her muscles. In a flash, she evolved from barely knowing which end of a bow to hold into a totally competent hunter-class fighter. In the time it takes to blink your eyes, Eric got hit with the exact same boost. His clumsy spear work instantly crystallized from amateur basics into fluid and confident technique as I tossed my old longbow over to Elia and handed Eric the heavy iron spear. My composite bow was way too heavy for her to pull back, yet the standard longbow matched her newly upgraded abilities. Like a glove, Eric's brand new class specialized heavily in close-quarters infantry combat and perched on our elevated position, wielding a long spear pointing straight down the hill, was practically a death sentence for anyone foolish enough to climb toward us. Instructing Elia to fall back slightly and provide covering arrow support, I stashed my primary bow safely behind the boulder, drew out my trusty broadsword and arm shield, and waited until the enemy shield wall crept right within striking range before launching myself off that rock ledge, like a hungry tiger with a massive mortgage payment due, unleashing a total whirlwind slash. Shield formations meant absolutely nothing in that chaotic moment. Right through the narrow seam between 2 raised shields, my blade sliced instantly, before those frontline guards even realized the annoying archer had completely flipped the script into a lethal swordsman, plunging down upon their heads from above. Total chaos began crumbling the enemy front line behind me. Eric violently thrust his spear downhill at any rogue try to pull a flank maneuver, while Alia's arrows started locking on necks with terrifying pinpoint precision, considering she was officially a camp follower. Barely 20 seconds prior, emerging straight from the tunnel mouth, Iron wielded his freshly upgraded spear, slicing through foes like liquid death, and spearheaded a brutal counteroffensive through the now clear passage. Bandax arrows quickly resumed their steady, mechanical, throat-hunting rhythm. Caught completely in a brutal pincer movement, the bandits found themselves squeezed between an elite hillside death squad and a dark tunnel packed with suddenly competent ex-slaves, fighting like seasoned veterans rather than rookies of a single day, who had only just picked up weapons. Perched high on a majestic war horse, the one-eyed boss watched in utter disbelief as a 60-man raiding party got thoroughly dismantled by a 14-year-old kid. 2 teenagers, and a handful of runaway slaves, who apparently triggered a mid-battle level up. Like secret characters in an RPG nobody else could see, which was honestly dead on what actually went down, though he definitely didn't have a player manual. I threw my entire body into that mob like a high-speed blender, with the safety lid completely missing, swords spinning wildly, shields deflecting blows, and fresh blood spraying in bizarre angles I never knew blood could possibly travel. A whirlwind slash, combined with a heavy spin, instantly converted me into a medieval food processor. Every single hostile fool who dared step close freely donated a severe neck wound to the cause, before crashing backward into the dirt screaming. Was any of this glamorous? Oh no, absolutely not. These goons weren't just standing around politely, waiting patiently for execution. Rusted spears, heavy broadswords, spiked clubs, and farm tools were raining heavy impacts all over me. My enchanted armor took the brunt of the punishment, yet my legs looked like they had just lost a death match against an angry, metallic rose bush made entirely of knives. Warm blood soaked down right into my heavy boots, producing gross, squishing noises with every frantic step. Peak heroism mixed with absolute grossness. Still, the enemy had it way worse. 12 casualties dropped in under 60 seconds, courtesy of yours truly. Eric went completely unhinged right beside me, his spear thrusting with the fluid grace of someone born holding a shaft, instead of just receiving an instant combat skill download. Scarcely 90 seconds ago, just a few feet back, Alia had flattened her small frame tight against the jagged cliff face. Operating like a deadly, silent wallflower, she calmly punched lethal arrows straight through enemy windpipes, with the relaxed, casual precision of an office worker. Sorting out morning mail. 5 direct kills, meaning the girl, labeled as a helpless camp follower earlier this morning, had transformed into the most terrifying postal worker in entire medieval history. Suddenly, the dark tunnel exploded with noise as iron. Bandak and Nick spearheaded our garrison out in a blood-curdling charge. Emerging from the shadow of the fortress wall, a double crossfire trapped the bandits in the middle. Iron Spear spearheaded the push like a heat-seeking missile, carrying heavy baggage of rage. Bandak scampered up the opposite slope, unleashing a fresh barrage of arrows from a brand new angle. Because apparently, one sniper perch wasn't doing it for this valley. Drop your weapons or get clapped, I screamed at the top of my lungs. Mostly because my arms were completely fried, and slaughtering foes is some serious cardio. The outlaw crew shattered like discount pottery, which had barely stayed together, out of sheer dread for their one-eyed captain. And the moment our backup rolled up, that panic vanished quicker than my empathy. Blades clattered against the dusty ground. Grown men face-planted straight into the dirt, with both palms locked over their skulls. One Eye himself spun his majestic warhorse around and bolted straight toward the canyon exit. Solid survival instinct, terrible tactical move, since he chose to flee. On the exact prize in this valley, I coveted more than his life. That beast stood 2 meters tall at the shoulder, flaunting muscles carved from marble, valuing at least 20 gold pieces. Probably more if he genuinely believed I would let that magnificent creature trot out of my life. He obviously never ran into someone who grew up dirt poor. Across 2 separate lifetimes, I snatched my composite bow off my back and sprinted hard along the ridge, scouting for a clean line of fire, while he crouched low over the saddle, like a veteran who had dodged plenty of arrows. His thick leather armor covered every vital point, his head pressed tightly against the stallion's neck. The man knew all the tricks to render himself a terrible target while flying at top speed. My first arrow clipped his thigh. He shrieked out loud, but managed to stay mounted, which proved genuinely impressive, yet super annoying. The warhorse surged ahead toward the tree line. Give him 5 more seconds, and he would vanish into the deep forest forever. Then I caught sight of it, a tiny gap, where the leather straps on his back armor failed to overlap properly, exposing maybe 2 inches of bare flesh, visible exclusively from my elevated viewpoint. He sat 100 paces away, barreling at maximum velocity, bouncing wildly on a charging mount, leaving me with precisely 1 shot, before the trees swallowed him up. My entire physique froze solid. The noisy world shrank down to that tiny 2-inch gap, and the shaft resting between my fingers. Everything I practiced, the focused, breathing technique, calming my racing pulse, the mastery of archery guiding my reticle, the enhanced vision granted by my upgrades, locking onto the moving target, all condensed into a single frozen frame in time. I let loose the triple-bladed iron arrowhead system, crafted sharp enough to slice through a hair, punching clean through that opening to bury deep in his spine. He let out a shriek, his arms went completely dead, and he tumbled sideways off the saddle. Như một tài khoai tây có vẻ ngoài thảm hại hết chỗ nói. Con chiến mã cứ lượn lờ quanh người chủ vừa gục ngã, vừa ngơ ngác lại cực kỳ trung thành và đáng yêu. Và giờ nó cũng là của tôi luôn. Ông chủ mới chính là... Tiếng hò rao của Mighty Iron vang dội cả một góc hẻm núi. Để rồi ngay khoảnh khắc đó, tất cả binh lính của tôi đồng loạt tung hô vang dội, hệt như cách tôi vừa ghi bàn thắng quyết định trong trận đấu bóng đá bạo lực nhất hành tinh vậy. 32 tên cướp còn lại nhanh chóng xin hàng ngay lập tức. Vũ khí vứt tứ tung mặt thì cắm thẳng xuống bùn nhão. Lòng tự trọng vứt bỏ sạch sẽ. Nick đứng ra xứng câu hô đầu hàng hay là chết. Với cái nhiệt huyết hừng hực của một gã vừa được thăng cấp lên chiến binh giáp bom, chỉ cách đó khoảng vỏn vẹn 3 phút, và đang cực kỳ hóng xem bộ kỹ năng mới của mình hoạt động thế nào trên những mục tiêu sống. Lũ cướp rất khôn ngoan khi quyết định không thử nghiệm điều đó. Nhắc đến Nick mới nhớ, tôi vừa tốn hẳn 1 vàng để nâng cấp hắn trong lúc dọn dẹp chiến trường, và việc tận mắt chứng kiến cơ thể hắn biến đổi theo thời gian thực chưa bao giờ là nhàm chán. Cơ bắp phồng lên cuồn cuộn, phản xạ trở nên sắc bén hẳn. Bao năm kinh nghiệm sử dụng rìu bóng ùa về ngập tràn trong đại não, hệt như có ai đó vừa cắm thẳng một chiếc ổ cứng USB vào thẳng hộp sọ của hắn vậy. Chỉ số lòng trung thành của hắn nhảy vọt thêm 5 điểm. Rõ ràng là việc được ban phép búp sức mạnh trực tiếp bởi lãnh chúa tuổi tin thần bí thực sự củng cố tinh thần làm việc nhóm tuyệt đối. Các chỉ số của riêng tôi cũng nhận được một cú hích cực xịn sò. Độ thuần thục bắn cung vọt thẳng lên mức 132. Vũ khí một tay đạt 125 điểm. Cú bắn ảo diệu nhắm vào tên trùm cướp đang bỏ chạy hồi nãy hóa ra lại mang về một lượng điểm kinh nghiệm khổng lồ. Hệ thống này rất chuộng độ khó, chứ không chỉ nhìn số lượng. Biết thế này thì tốt quá. Vào lần tới khi cần cày điểm thuần thục kỹ năng, tôi chắc chắn sẽ thử tung hướng kiếm bị bịt mắt trên dây thừng càng cao. Chắc chắn phải kiếm được ít nhất là 50 điểm. Elia lôi xề xệch tôi bước thẳng vào trong tòa tháp đá ngay sau đó, và lột sạch bộ giáp tả tơi của tôi ra. Trông nó chẳng khác gì vừa đi một vòng qua máy nghiền. Rác rời, cô ấy sát trùng vết thương bằng nước đun sôi, chát đấm cao dán chỉ thương lên khắp người, rồi cuốn tôi lại chặt cứng như một xác ướp Ai Cập thời Trung Cổ. Tôi thấy chi chít vết cắt ở những chỗ hiểm mà bản thân còn chẳng ngờ tới, nhưng may là không có vết thương nào chí mạng cả. Bộ giáp đồng bán nguyệt thực sự đã làm rất tốt nhiệm vụ hôm nay, khi chặn đứng ít nhất là hàng tá nhát chém. Nếu không thì tôi đã sớm bị rạch tung người như một bức thư rồi. Bên ngoài, đội ngũ của tôi vận hành trơn tru như một cỗ máy hoàn hảo. Iron trực tiếp điều phối toàn bộ khâu thu gom vũ khí, lột giáp và xử lý xác chết ngổn ngang, với hiệu suất làm việc của một kẻ đã mòn mỏi chờ đợi suốt quãng đời nô lệ chỉ để có cơ hội được nắm quyền chỉ huy. Thi thể kẻ địch thì được đem đi hỏa táng ngay dưới lòng sông cạn. Đồ đạc còn dùng được chất thành đống lớn bên ngoài tháp. 32 tù nhân bị lùa nhốt vào chính căn phòng đá ngột ngạt ngày trước, nơi bọn chúng từng giam cầm đồng bào của tôi làm con tin. Công lý nhân quả được thực thi kèm theo một chút mỉa mai cay đắng. Chiến lợi phẩm thu được phần lớn toàn là đồ bỏ đi. Nào là kiếm rẻ tiền, giáo gỗ mục, khiên ván ép và cả dụng cụ làm nông bị chế cháo thành vũ khí. Thực chất đám cướp này chỉ là những kẻ tị nạn cùng đường, tay cầm gậy gộc sắc nhọn chứ chẳng phải binh lính chuyên nghiệp gì. Tôi suýt thì thấy chẳng lòng, nhưng rồi kịp nhớ lại rằng bọn chúng từng định dùng khói độc và tàn sát người của tôi không thương tiếc. As dawn broke, any ounce of sympathy completely vanished. A 2-day fasting penalty was handed down by me, followed by light rations and compulsory farm labor. Brutal. Yet this world definitely didn't hand out participation trophies. Having attacked my home and lost the fight, they were now assigned to grow my wheat, cultivating those exact same fields where their predecessors had forced my slaves to toil. The endless wheel of exploitation simply kept turning, and today it happened to spin in my favor. With fresh bandages and perched on the tower steps, I watched Eric guide my brand new war horse into the courtyard. That magnificent beast stood tall, towering over our pathetic little mules, like an absolute lion among hamsters. Mental accounting was performed by me. Secret Valley Fortress defended, military secured. Towering war horse acquired, gold reserves expanded. Injuries healing nicely and remaining manageable. Enemy casualties for the day? Honestly, I totally lost track. Not bad for a dead cancer patient who woke up stranded in a cave. Just 3 weeks ago, everyone was lined up by me in front of the tower to deliver my very first motivational speech, directed at an audience of battered ex-slaves, and honestly, I totally crushed it. 2 lifetimes worth of binge-watching movies and reading corporate management books finally paid off. You fought with absolute loyalty, courage, and honor. Today, I am Hog Collins, the rightful heir to the Wind Dragon family. Follow my lead, and one day you'll secure your own lands and titles. Their eyes immediately lit up, like I had just promised them the moon on a silver platter, which, technically speaking, I kind of had. Yet seeing loyalty stats spike by 10 points each proved they genuinely believed every word. And in this brutal reality, pure belief was ultimate currency. Iron Bandak, alongside Nick, dropped down to one knee, addressing me as Lord for the very first time. Suddenly, the ambient air shifted, as if we had crossed an invisible boundary line, transforming from random teenagers and hidden cave slaves into an actual fledgling military organization. My tiny little army was structured into 2 separate squads by me. Infantry placed under Iron, with Nick and Eric acting as deputies. Archers put under Bandak, while everyone else left over, totaling the remaining dozen-plus prospective reformed prisoners. Would have to endure 3 solid months of basic combat training, pass the rigorous evaluation, and finally join a squad, getting promoted from farm slave straight to soldier status, equipped with full meals and professional combat technique training. Fail the test, and you stay farming, classic style. An incentive structure that instantly made every single person standing in that courtyard extremely focused on figuring out which exact end of a spear was supposed to go forward. Even those 32 captured bandits served as prime potential recruits. Starving them for a couple of days came first. Nothing personal, just standard procedure. A firm remember who's in charge protocol. Then they were immediately deployed to work the fields. Those cooperative ones who showed actual potential could eventually try out for active squads down the road. This world essentially ran on recycling people, and I was getting disturbingly efficient at playing that game. Elliot took charge of logistics like she was born, with a spreadsheet hard-coded into her DNA, cataloging every single captured weapon within hours, estimating asset values, logging grain reserves, and whipping the underground storeroom into shape with hardcore military precision. Appointing her head of household and de facto guard captain was my move, a title that sounded pretty dope, until you realized her estate was literally a sketchy bandit cave, and her entire security detail consisted of herself. Still, titles totally slap in this world, so she rocked hers with absolute pride, which honestly felt low-key wholesome. Nick was tasked with grilling the prisoners, since the kid had a surprisingly sharp brain, hidden beneath those heavy, axe-wielding muscles, while Eric got orders to look after the prime warhorse. When Eric insisted on sweating it out and doing every bit of stable work solo, I pulled him aside for a crash course in Leadership 101. Someday you're going to be commanding hundreds of troops, so learn to delegate, train a couple of slaves as stable hands, and lock in on being a proper commander, instead of just an overpowered stable boy. That confused teenager expression instantly vanished from his face, replaced by a deeply focused, serious vibe, like a mental light switch had just been flicked on inside his brain. Hell yeah, exactly what I wanted, officers, not just regular grunts. Dinner turned out to be the absolute greatest feast Eagle Beak Valley had ever seen, featuring white bread, hearty beef stew, fresh veggies, and mushroom soup, though Elia flat out refused to share a table with me, because apparently, servants don't dine with lords around these parts. Sure, I could have pressed the issue, but trying to rewrite centuries of cultural brainwashing over a bowl of beef stew felt way too ambitious, so I let it slide. She was dead set, however, on scrubbing me down with a full sponge bath afterward, landing as easily the most awkward, yet most luxurious flex I've experienced across both of my lifetimes. A gorgeous 16-year-old girl was meticulously and thoroughly washing every single inch of a 14-year-old lord's skin, while blushing a brilliant shade of crimson. This moment was peak medieval nobility right here, or maybe just peak medieval secondhand embarrassment. My face was burning, so red it probably rivaled my open wounds. Not that I'm complaining at all. After weeks of reeking intensely of fresh wolf blood, damp cave fungus, and dead bandit, getting thoroughly scrubbed clean felt like transcending straight into a higher dimension. Scabs had completely formed over my injuries 2 days later, all thanks to that miraculous black healing ointment. The stuff looked just like roof tar and smelled like a stagnant swamp's armpit. Yet it outperformed any modern medicine from my original world. I was already itching to get back to combat training. Nick burst in with his interrogation debrief, radiating the chaotic, unfiltered energy of a golden retriever, proudly dropping a tennis ball at your feet. The initial bandit force counted 98 members total, with 85 having raided us, leaving roughly 13 or more behind, including a second boss who was an expert archer, still chilling safely at their main base 80 miles away, completely clueless that their invasion squad had just been rebranded into my personal farm workforce. Their base camp also held 30 additional captives and a tiny scrap of agricultural land. That precise detail instantly grabbed my full attention. A working smithy equipped to manufacture basic armaments. A blacksmith's forge operates in a harsh world where possessing quality steel determines whether you survive or perish. Owning my personal weapon forge felt equivalent to discovering an ATM printing cash. Crusty medieval currency, but profit nonetheless. Pure desperation drove those bandits to attack us, rather than actual ambition. A local noble known as Toot had placed a price on their heads, following multiple raids on his settlements. And aggressive mercenaries were closing in fast. They desperately sought a fresh hideout, having learned about our peaceful valley through the 2 prisoners I previously let go. Props to pass me for showing way too much mercy, leading them to try conquering us by force. Their entire master strategy boiled down to escaping the lethal squad hunting them down by picking a fight with an alternative guy, who proved to be significantly worse. 14 bandits and 1 decent archer held down a camp 80 miles away, crammed with captives, supplies, and valuable metalworking gear, completely unaware that their leadership had experienced a permanent downsize. It was a total sitting duck operation, merely waiting for someone possessing a small crew, and zero moral constraints to swoop in and take over. As luck would have it, I fit that description perfectly. My brain was already formulating blueprints for Operation Fast March to strike before word could spread, absorb their personnel and assets, dismantle the smithing equipment, and transport everything functional back to Eagle Beak Valley, doubling my workforce while unlocking metal crafting abilities and neutralizing a looming future threat, all accomplished in one clean sweep. Textbooks from my corporate past labeled this maneuver vertical integration, but I just called it Tuesday. Just 3 weeks prior, I was an orphan, wasting away from cancer in front of a monitor, whereas now I stood as a lord commanding a hidden stronghold, a growing militia, a fierce warhorse, a dragon breeding technique, and expansion blueprints. That would bring any venture capitalist to tears of pure joy. This epic climb out from rock bottom had only just begun, and my momentum was skyrocketing. A blacksmith's workshop. Those specific words hit my consciousness like a double espresso. An entire operational armory, nestled inside a bandit outpost 80 miles distant, guarded by 14 morons completely oblivious to the fact that their former leader was currently fertilizing my riverbank. I needed that forge just as badly as a drowning man gasped for oxygen. Convening a war council sounded remarkably prestigious, until you realized my cabinet consisted of 3 promoted ex-slaves, 2 adolescent vassals, and yours truly, a 14-year-old kid, pretending to master tactical leadership, drawn straight from movies and business manuals, acquired in a past life spent binge gaming. The game plan remained dead simple. Impress a few captured bandits serving as scouts and gate openers. Leave a bare minimum skeleton crew behind to secure home base, and launch a blitz march straight toward the enemy camp. Long before word got out that their invading squad had been repurposed into my personal farming crew, Nick had already worked his charm on the captives, pitching them a straightforward deal. Help us secure meals today and maybe win your freedom back, or cross us and rot in a stone cell forever. 10 volunteers stepped up instantly, faster than you can even say empty stomach. Elia hooked them up with warm soup and bread, handed out basic gear straight from our stash, and we shipped out within the hour. My entire strike force 5 featured bound soldiers, 10 freshly converted turncoats, and whatever overhyped confidence I had managed to build up. After surviving 3 weeks in this brutal wasteland, 2 grueling days of trekking through the Greenwood Hills showed me precisely why outlaws love this turf, and local lords completely ignored it. Pure rocky trash. Impenetrable forests and steep cliffs framed the horizon, with soil so dead you couldn't grow a grudge in it. let alone actual crops. Sandwiched between two provinces. It sat there like an unwanted middle child nobody wanted to claim. Absolute paradise for criminals. Total nightmare for tax collectors. Perched right on top of Mount Calculo was the bandit stronghold. Easily the most dramatic piece of real estate I'd laid eyes on since getting sucked into this world. A single winding track fought its way up sheer cliffs on every flank, punctuated by 5 checkpoint gates built into the rock face, and a fortress at the peak that looked like it was custom engineered just to make attackers cry. Its only major flaw: zero farmland whatsoever, and no water supply aside from whatever rain they caught. Cut off the exit, and everyone inside slowly perishes from dehydration. An impressive fortress. Sure, but terrible long-term planning compared to my Eagle Beak Valley, which boasted 100 acres of wheat, a flowing river, and a hidden tunnel entrance. This place was basically an overgrown eagle's nest, suffering from delusions of grandeur. No wonder I had coveted my valley so desperately. Waiting until dusk, prime deception lighting, I dispatched the 10 turncoats ahead, costumed as totally wiped-out survivors, dragging themselves home from a botched raid. Which, let's be honest, they technically were. The best fabrications are just facts. Rocking a different disguise, their leader, a guy answering to Ben Cook, turned out to be a low-key, phenomenal actor. Approaching the primary gate, he started weeping like he had just survived the apocalypse. "Brother, it's me, Ben Cook. We got completely ambushed. The boss is gone, and we barely made it out." His crew instantly backed him up with overlapping, panicked yelling that felt completely authentic and chaotic. It was an Oscar-worthy ensemble performance delivered by men whose sole driving motivation was basically, "Please just let us keep eating regular meals." The gate guard, a dude nicknamed Sickle, squinted downward, recognized a couple of faces, and unlatched the heavy door. The moment our guys flooded through the opening, I materialized straight out of the gloom, like history's most aggressive party crasher, dropping both sentries cold into unconsciousness before they could even process it. Bound, gagged, and stashed away, the captives had brought some company, right along with them. Down went the first gate, and not a single alarm went off. Gates 2 through 5 collapsed like a row of dominoes. Every single time, it was the exact same routine. Running back Benaku's tragic survivor act. A brief second of recognition, followed by a wide-open door. And boom. Me sending the guard straight into an involuntary power nap. By the time we hit Gate 5, I had built a total assembly line. Benakud drops the waterworks. The heavywood swings open. I sprint in, somebody catches a fist, and lights out. Iron bindings slap on them, and we keep moving. Pure, streamlined infiltration. Then we finally reached the massive summit fortress, and my usual swagger took a quick hit. The main entrance sat right at the top of a 300-step slope, slanted at a brutal 60-degree angle, hemmed in by stone walls built straight into jagged cliff faces, towering 20 to 30 meters high, while every other path was sheer, vertical rock that would give even a spider nightmares. If they slammed that gate shut and sounded the alarm now, we'd be trapped out on an exposed mountainside, getting pelted full of arrows, like sitting ducks in a high-stakes shooting gallery. The entire mission rested completely on Benakuk's acting skills. At this final checkpoint, one suspicious look from guard, one tiny slip of the tongue, one nervous glance back at the 6-armed fighters lurking in the shadows. Right behind, our little group of turncoats. And this whole stealth operation turns instantly, from a slick infiltration into an absolute bloodbath. Standing on those cold stone steps, I gripped my sword hilt tight, took a slow, steady breath, and watched Binocook close in on the last heavy gate, with heavy tears pouring down his pale cheeks, and his voice cracking, with a masterclass in sheer desperation. For an ex-bandit whose absolute peak performance 2 days ago was managing to get captured without dying, the guy had seriously found his calling. If this brutal world had Broadway, he'd be headlining every single night, but instead, he was my golden ticket into a high-altitude fortress, and every second of his Hollywood drama was worth way more than the cheap meal I bribed him with. With a loud groan, the massive gate creaked open. Ben Cook trudged up that grueling 60-degree ramp of death, calling out to his old crew like a lost puppy looking for home. And honestly, I gotta admit, if this guy ever gets burnout on the mercenary life, he's got a lucrative future in acting lockdown. Fake tears, breaking voice, the whole 9 yards. Meanwhile, I'm sandwiched right in the middle of our crew, doing my best to blend in like just another tired bandit. And totally not looking like, the psycho who took out everybody's boss 48 hours ago. That second boss wasn't born yesterday, though. Silver-haired and sharp-eyed, his face was mostly hidden beneath a heavy leather-wind hood tough enough to brush off a crossbow bolt, while keeping a loaded bow concealed safely behind the battlements, completely out of our sight. He forced every single person to approach completely solo, 10 steps apart, scanning faces by flickering torchlight, like the most paranoid club bouncer on the face of the planet. Next. 8 faces cleared, the guards slowly dropping their guard, and then it was my turn, giving him 0 time to even blink. The exact moment my sights lined up, with the only sliver of skin showing, where his eyes peeked through a ridiculous hood, I sent an arrow straight through from 40 paces uphill, battling pitch-black darkness on a steep incline. While he was halfway, tucked behind a stone wall, even I had to low-key respect that insane shot, considering I was the one who pulled the string. Total chaos instantly broke out across the fortress, though it was just 4 remaining bandits, and a bunch of spooked slaves, looking utterly clueless, accompanied by loud yelling and 0 organized pushback. The real snag was that the heavy gate remained firmly shut, leaving us stranded on a mountainside, primed for downhill skiing. We brought no ladders, no battering ram, and had 0 entry options aside from a door that nobody inside was remotely excited to crack open. So I unleashed my ultimate secret weapon, Ben Cook's mouth, tasking him with sweet-talking them. And man, he delivered a solid hour-long TED Talk that could have easily sold ice cubes to penguins. He dramatically wept over their fallen leaders, painted a wildly epic picture of serving a true noble lord, and gave him a serious reality check about the alternative, starving behind locked doors, until their bones withered into dust. Somehow, he managed to make surrendering sound like hitting the jackpot. The guy was so freakishly persuasive that listening to him almost made me want to pledge loyalty to myself all over again. Just like that, the wooden gate creaked wide open, and we streamed right inside without a drop of blood, or a single punch thrown, pulling off a smooth, hostile corporate takeover of a cliff-top fortress, pulled off entirely through one man's god-tier talent, for high-level gaslighting, combined with my eagerness to shoot folks in the pupil. I gave Ben Cook a very public shout-out, putting on a grand ceremony to accept his oath with a dramatic sword. Tap on the shoulder right in front of everyone. Pure PR genius, really. Behold what happens when you vibe with the new management, folks. A lightning-fast upgrade from captive to sworn ride or die. The remaining 9 volunteers hit the dirt so fast, they probably shattered their kneecaps on the stone floor, all of them begging to sign up. My system weeded them out with 0 mercy, though. Out of 9 eager applicants, only 3 actually cleared the minimum 60 loyalty bar. The rest just wanted the perks, without any real heart in the game. Wildly enough, the system could literally sniff out true sincerity, functioning like a medieval lie detector, powered entirely by magic instead of a battery pack. I accepted every single verbal vow just for appearance's sake, while quietly bookmarking only the genuinely loyal ones. 4 actual squad rosters down the line. As for the phonies, they could either prove their worth over the next 3 months, or stay stuck on farming duty for eternity. Ben Cook himself racked up a solid 75 loyalty score, officially earning the badge of a Swadino recruit. Not a bad pickup at all. The man thoroughly earned his spot, through pure theatrical wizardry, and having the street smarts to back the winning horse early. Surpassing all initial expectations, the mountain's stronghold loomed massive, measuring roughly a kilometer across at the peak, even though the majority of it consisted of jagged heights and sparse patches of dirt awkwardly carved between boulders. Weathered stone dwellings were scattered randomly around a communal central courtyard, featuring a pair of masonry structures, functioning as the commander's quarters. Throngs of broken captives huddled closely together, wearing the blank, vacant stares of souls who had completely surrendered to the fact that they were basically furniture with a pulse. Ownership didn't make a lick of difference anymore, since every single day was equally bleak. That toxic mindset was totally fixable, though, as I'd already proven firsthand with Iron Bandak and Nick. Hand someone a clear purpose, solid training, and even the tiniest glimpse of moving up in the world, and that dead-eyed captive instantly morphs into a fierce beast of a fighter who will gladly charge straight into hell, screaming your gamertag. The secret sauce wasn't terror at all. It was genuine hope. But I wasn't here for a philosophical TED Talk. I was here for the loot. Tracking down the forge tucked away near the central platform. A legit setup complete with 3 hammers of different sizes. A heavy-duty furnace bellows. Multiple pairs of tongs and all the matching gear. Crouching outside was a built 20-something slave, answering to the name Wibart, looking about as emotionally invested in my grand entrance as a statue watching paint dry. His tragic backstory was painfully cliché. His grandfather had worked as a slave smith. His father had labored as a slave smith. And naturally, he was born into the exact same cursed trade. 3 generations of master artisans, traded around like second-hand tools. His most recent master had offloaded him to a crooked merchant syndicate before ruthless bandits hijacked the entire caravan, leaving him to rebuild an entire workshop from absolute scratch, high up in a freezing outlaw den, using only the pocket tools he'd managed to smuggle. The poor guy's whole life cycle was just get sold, get kidnapped, build another forge, and repeat forever. Want to roll with me and keep crafting legendary gear? Sure, he muttered with zero expression, as if I just asked if he wanted a slice of toast. Yet my system interface completely leaked the truth. Loyalty flagged at 60, hitting the bare minimum threshold, meaning he was actually down to pledge allegiance. Wibart genuinely didn't give a damn who signed his paychecks, mostly because nobody had ever bothered giving him a reason to care. He had functioned as a mere implement his entire existence, swapping masters as effortlessly as a hammer, changing grips. A loyalty rating of 60 wasn't born out of hype. It was just the default compliance of a broken man who had learned the hard way that fighting back was useless, and total compliance was the only ticket to survival. I was fully planning to flip that script by feeding this guy decent meals, treating him with respect, and reminding him that his master craftsmanship actually mattered to someone trying to build an actual empire. And just watch that loyalty metric skyrocket, having a master blacksmith who genuinely wanted to forge killer weapons for our growing forces was easily worth more than a dozen half-hearted grunts with swords, while standing inside that dimly lit, flickering forge, surrounded by heavy iron anvils and striking tools. Amidst the faint scent of weathered iron, a sudden click echoed in my mind. Farming lands and loyal soldiers were mine at last, alongside a secret fortress tucked away safely. And now I possessed the power to forge my very own gear. Every single piece of my upcoming empire fell right into place, assembling like a complex puzzle being solved by a hardcore, super exhausted, yet insanely lucky teenager who flat out refused to bite the dust in either of his lives. Wibart the blacksmith joined my squad, with the zero-hype energy of someone ordering a basic takeout lunch. His loyalty stat sat at 60, barely clearing the mandatory baseline, though I honestly couldn't care less if he loved me or just put up with me, because a master craftsman with a dedicated upgrade tree proved far more valuable than a whole dozen hyper-enthusiastic noobs swinging swords around. Instructions were given straight to Aaliyah to feed him like a king, seeing how this guy's hands were destined to craft the weapons, holding my entire kingdom together, and hungry fingers always yield sloppy craftsmanship. Guiding me through the shadows, Benikook led the way into the bandit leader's private quarters, which turned out to be low-key luxurious for a ruthless criminal hiding out on a mountain peak. Plush velvet carpets and cozy cotton bedding lined the room, complete with all the perks. This one-eyed maniac had been living like an absolute baller on a budget, while his poor underlings survived on a single stale bread roll a day. Without missing a beat, Benikook shoved a bookshelf aside, popping a dummy stone block straight out of the masonry, with the casual ease of cracking open a cereal box, thereby exposing a hidden wall compartment that held a sturdy wooden chest. A modest stack of gold coins rested inside, accompanied by a rare combat manual detailing the spiral lance, an advanced polearm technique designed for mounted combat. My pulse literally skipped a beat. Finding a solid cavalry skill had been my main priority for my mid-tier Knight certification exam, and the gaming universe had just handed it to me wrapped in a neat bow, hidden inside a scumbag's secret wall vault. The payout in gold was majorly underwhelming, though, featuring a measly 30 coins despite commanding nearly 100 thugs, meaning this guy had managed to save less cash than I made off skinning wolves. During my very first week running an enterprise, the criminal underworld was clearly nowhere near as lucrative as those flashy recruitment brochures always promised. Every single useful loot item was vacuumed straight into my inventory, spanning harvested grain, raw iron ingots, Those velvety carpets, the combat manual, and even the fancy bedding set. Watching physical matter vanish straight into the palm of my hand left Benikook staring, causing his loyalty meter to tick upward by another 2 points. Nothing builds blind faith quite like watching your brand new boss casually break every known law of physics. A proper feast was served down to the captive slaves, featuring black bread until they couldn't possibly eat another bite, plus hot bowls of hearty meat soup. Their reaction of pure gratitude felt simultaneously overwhelming and heartbreaking, hitting me right in the feels. These poor souls had legitimately never experienced eating until full in their entire lives, having spent their existence defined solely by moldy crusts and brutal beatings. Yet here I stood, being praised like an absolute saint, just for supplying the absolute bare minimum of basic human decency. The bar for basic kindness in this savage world sat buried so deep underground that you would literally need an excavator to unearth it. The next morning broke, prompting me to deliver the standard ultimatum to everyone. Take some provisions and walk away, or stay behind and enlist in my service. A total of 25 souls chose to stay put, including every single branded slave among them. Those marked with the word slave burned right into their neck arteries. Stayed because they knew full well they had nowhere else to turn. While some freeborn captives chose to walk away, I let them head out freely, equipped with proper provisions and absolutely zero hard feelings. My personal conscience still had boundaries, even if this ruthless world clearly didn't. Every single valuable asset was stripped clean from the mountain stronghold, acting just like professional movers holding a serious grudge. All portable gear either went straight in my secret inventory or got loaded onto the people's backs. Our group then began marching onward toward Eaglebeak Valley, forming a quirky caravan of former slaves and reformed bandits. Right in the middle walked a silent blacksmith clutching his precious, beloved tools. Alongside yours truly, a teenager equipped with a hidden dimensional pocket, stuffed with enough survival gear to comfortably stock a medieval Costco. Right as we reached the halfway point home, Bandak suddenly materialized straight out of the dark forest shadows, looking tense and whispering about an ambush dead ahead. 12 hidden figures were crouching down low in the thick bushes, about 120 paces away. Creeping forward cautiously, I managed to spot them myself, camouflaged exceptionally well within the dense undergrowth, and remaining practically invisible without Bandak's elite hunter senses. Otherwise, we totally would have walked straight into their fatal kill zone. Quickly knocking an arrow and calculating the tricky crosswind, I let loose a warning shot that buried itself into a tree trunk just 1 inch from the leader's neck. It was close enough to give him a clean shave, yet far enough to prove I intentionally chose to spare his life. You better choose wisely this time. All 12 individuals slowly rose to their feet from the brush, moving with the tense, careful caution of people who had just suddenly realized they weren't actually the apex predators in this scenario. "Hey friend, you guys definitely don't look like ordinary bandits," their leader called out with a smile so intensely forced it honestly could have powered a small windmill. The big guy sported some great heavy armor, featuring sturdy chainmail and an iron helmet, alongside a massive battle axe, while his entire squad looked thoroughly well-equipped too. Even their lowest geared member wore premium multi-layered leather that my own top soldiers would have practically killed to get. "We're part of the Hulk Junior mercenary outfit," I declared, flashing my copper badge openly from a safe, secure distance. "Operating as Captain Burrico of the Wild Bull Mercenary Squad. We are here specifically to take down the one-eyed bandit chief. Are you guys on the exact same mission?" I almost laughed out loud. These eager mercenaries had been lurking quietly in ambush posture, completely ready to massacre what they incorrectly assumed was just a column of poorly armed bandits, collect the sweet bounty, and call it a day's easy work. My swift warning shot had instantly reclassified the entire dangerous situation from a casual payday to an absolute potential suicide mission against someone capable of threading needles, using arrows from 120 paces away. Had I not fired that shot first, they would have ruthlessly ambushed my people, a ragtag column consisting of former slaves and converts, who literally looked exactly like the very bandit rabble they had been hired to hunt down and exterminate. Afterwards, they would have hauled those innocent bodies to the nearest lord, collected their hefty cash reward, and absolutely nobody would have ever known the difference. That's just how the classic mercenary business model works. Slaughter first, verify identities never. Yet right now, Baruko was flashing full smiles and talk of brotherhood. because my expert archery skills had clearly communicated a loud message. Listen up. I can easily drop you before you even finish drawing that heavy axe. So let's just be good friends instead. That universal language of violent diplomacy is something else. What I forgot to mention was that their target had already bought the farm, with his fortress totally cleaned out, and all his people smoothly integrated into my booming workforce, while tucked away safely. In my hidden inventory pocket sat his classified combat manual beside a velvet rug and 40 pounds of iron ingots. Go ahead and let those guys hike up that mountain, stumble onto an empty stronghold, and waste a whole week trying to figure out what went down. By then I'd be chilling back in my hidden valley, drilling soldiers and smithing new gear. Certain facts are meant to be shared freely, whereas other secrets are worth their weight in gold, strictly because you keep your mouth shut about them. Just picturing the absolute shock on 12 heavily strapped mercenaries' faces when a scrawny teenager wielding a bow forced them to drop their attitudes and play nice is honestly priceless. Baruko and his wild bull mercenaries sized up my ragtag convoy of freed captives and reformed bandits. Did some lightning-fast mental math, keeping my arrow in mind, which was still humming inside a tree trunk, barely an inch from his scout's throat, and decided right then and there that being buddy-buddy was way healthier than throwing hands. Declining to take the actual bounty contract, I told him coolly that these bandits had just gotten on my nerves, so I low-key wiped out their whole operation. Just a personal errand. His eyebrows shot up so high they almost vanished into his hairline. Meanwhile, my crew had smoothly fallen into tight combat formation, without me needing to utter a single word. Iron Eric and Nick locking down a solid shield wall right in front of me. Bandak ghosting into the canopy to secure a sniper vantage point. Elia slipping sideways into the timber with her bow drawn. And even the 10 armed converts gripping their weapons tightly, while standing completely on guard. We gave off the vibe of a squad that had practiced this drill for weeks, instead of a random bunch of strangers. We're trying to kill each other just 48 hours ago. Taking in all these tactical details, Baruko quickly choked down whatever sudden ambush fantasies he was cooking up in his head. He proposed a business deal, switching over to his smoothest friendly uncle voice, suggesting we split the bounty since we put in the sweat, and they would handle the paperwork for a clean 50-50 split. The sheer nerve of the guy almost impressed me. These 12 dudes had contributed literally a whole lot of nothing. 0 risk, 0 combat involvement, and 0 casualties among friends, yet wanted half of 200 gold pieces, just for the hassle of walking down to a lord's office and claiming they did the job. The Mercenary Guild's honor code had more leaks in it than my old socks. Driving a hard bargain, I negotiated him up to 120 gold for my side, leaving just 80 for them while throwing in some Oscar-worthy dramatics concerning my 6 fallen comrades and their ridiculously expensive funeral arrangements. Total fiction, of course. Not a single soul on my team was lost during that fortress raid, though Baruko didn't need to be clued in on that detail. He also made an awkward move to purchase my slaves for resale, which I shut down on the spot. These folks represented my future labor force, not some cheap commodities. The second I dropped the line that my family needs them, Baruko's whole demeanor instantly flipped from equals status mercenary to an utterly respectful subordinate. In this harsh world, dropping hints about high birth felt totally like flexing a VIP pass. Everyone's posture instantly straightened up, and the price bargaining suddenly got way more polite. A meetup at the Kamara Town Tavern was set for 3 days later to handle the gold exchange. Our mercenary badges were verified before we split ways. He would go check out the fallen, empty fortress, claim the bounty, and bring back my share. My plan was to head home and act like I hadn't just magically finessed 120 gold coins out of thin air for a job I was already compensated for through looting. Getting 120 free gold coins for doing absolutely 0 extra work, when added to everything else, made my personal treasury low-key look impressive. And the only price I paid was keeping a straight poker face, plus dropping 1 very carefully calculated warning shot. Back at Eagle Beak Valley, I finally let out a long breath. The hidden valley featuring its wheat fields, stone architecture, defensive wall, and growing community was starting to feel like a real home. An illegal, undocumented, technically just a squatted bandit hideout kind of home. But hey, home nonetheless, as everything was on an upward trend. More residents, more supplies, stronger military might, and extra gold. Then it was time to level up. Locking myself inside the stone tower for a solid 2 days was spent drafting a training manual, which I titled The Military Training Doctrine. 2 lifetimes worth of experience got crammed onto a single sheepskin scroll. Modern military discipline principles were neatly disguised as medieval common sense. The 3 pillars featured structured drill formations, borrowed right out of my old world's armed forces, since nothing builds instant obedience faster than standing completely frozen for a couple of hours while someone screams at you. Fundamental combat training covered 4 separate weapon classes to help every recruit discover their natural fighting style, alongside a tactical communication setup using flag signals, hand gestures, and combat formations that were centuries ahead of anything currently used in this realm. Most local lords commanded their troops with the tactical brilliance of basically shouting, "Charge that way and try your best not to die." Meanwhile, my soldiers would function like a synchronized machine, moving forward, falling back, flanking, and regrouping strictly through silent hand cues, while enemy forces were still yelling confused commands across a chaotic battlefield. Even with a minimal squad size, superior coordination could easily multiply real combat effectiveness multiple times over. Calling a gathering with my command staff sounded pretty official until you remembered it was just 5 people huddled inside a former bandit's living room. 4 of them actually knew how to read, which was honestly huge for this world, where literacy was a rare luxury most regular peasants never experienced. Iron and Nick were illiterate, so I tasked Alia with teaching them. Having a squad leader who can't read orders is basically a walking disaster waiting to get everyone killed. One rule was made crystal clear to everyone: follow the manual down to the exact letter. Absolutely zero freelancing here, folks. I really feel this way flows a lot better. Creative liberty was completely off the table, while suggestions for tweaks could be pitched, and revisions were open to my consideration. Not a single modification went into effect until I gave the green light, considering these folks were literal bandits and captives. Just a week prior, ironclad discipline was a total must, before any flexibility could be unlocked. Then recruitment day rolled around. Tryouts were thrown wide open to every eager soul across the valley. Enslaved people, hunted outlaws, rehabilitated thugs, literally anyone looking to swap farming for front lines. 60 recruits actually made the cut, mostly on the younger side, primarily because the criminal underworld operated under a brutally simple age filter where anyone frail or elderly was already gone. My newly upgraded soldiers were immediately assigned as instructors. Iron took charge of spear drills while Bandak handled archery. Nick instructed axe combat, and Eric took the swords. Every single one had been system boosted, with years of compressed, high-level combat experience, transforming them into way better mentors than veterans who spent actual decades grinding it out. It was basically the blind leading the blind, except the blind guys had just undergone magical laser eye surgery and were now packing the sharpest vision in the entire place. Watching 60 former captives drilling battle formations deep inside a hidden mountain valley, while picking up flag signals and combat stances from trainers who were legally property just 2 weeks ago, felt like a low-key, surreal fever dream, balancing out as the most absurd yet promising thing I had ever witnessed. Not a single one of them was a real soldier yet. Half the crew were gripping their spears like clumsy broomsticks, and a solid quarter flinched every time someone raised their voice, conditioned by past lives where yelling meant brutal beatings. Even so, they belonged to me now, every last one of them finally eating full square meals for the very first time in their miserable existences, while picking up skills capable of flipping them for victims straight into absolute warriors, all under a system that valued pure merit over bloodline. Within 3 months flat, the top-tier performers would step up into my elite squads, unlock system upgrades, and form the core framework of an army, ready to carve a massive domain out of the wild frontier. Back in the day, the Wind Dragon family commanded 1,000 armored knights, while my grand opening featured 60 barefoot ex-slaves, sweating through jumping jacks in the middle of a wheat field. Hey, every legendary dynasty has to start somewhere, right? Eagle Beak Valley got flipped into a full-scale medieval boot camp, which I followed up by spending 2 straight months turning myself into a walking encyclopedia of lethal weaponry, because apparently having 5 combat techniques wasn't quite enough for a 14-year-old dealing with massive abandonment baggage. Backed by an overpowered cheat system, the core strategy was foolproof. Master every single combat art in my arsenal. Grind weapon mastery hard, until the system force feeds me total perfection and inhale enough protein to fuel a mythical dragon, powered by a breathing technique that burned through calories, like an industrial furnace tearing through old newspapers. Each technique I locked down actively re-sculpted my physique, hardening targeted muscle groups, reinforcing my skeletal structure, and thickening my circulating blood energy, meaning every fresh technique gained wasn't just tossing another weapon into my inventory. It was seriously upgrading my own hardware, sort of like downloading a fresh patch that completely overclocks the processor. Spear first. 1 solid month of daily grinding, half of it on foot, and the rest spent riding atop my newly acquired warhorse, who proved to be way more cooperative than anyone I'd ever teamed up with in either lifetime. When proficiency finally hit 101, basic spear mastery downloaded straight into my head, feeling like a whole year of compressed muscle memory. 2 days later, at 110 thrusts, 2 additional phantom years of practice unlocked themselves, while my physique restructured itself once more, arms stretching longer and core tightening into a grip as fierce as iron pliers. A surge of blood energy rushed through me, powerful enough to kick off serious dragon breathing sessions again, which I had been heavily rationing, because my physical shell couldn't keep up with the burn, now balanced between combat mastery upgrades and consuming roughly my own body weight in meat daily. My internal energy factory was finally running at maximum output. I also low-key invented the concept of a saddle. Well, calling it an invention is a massive stretch, since I only vaguely recalled what saddles looked like from my old world, and ended up sketching something a kindergartner would honestly be ashamed of, passing the rough drawing over to Wibart the blacksmith, who stared at it like I had handed him avant-garde art, and politely let me know that crafting saddles required carpentry instead of metalworking. So the revolutionary cavalry equipment upgrade was going to have to wait. I collected my 120 free gold coins instead, straight from Barutko's mercenary squad, down at the Kamara Town Tavern. Easily the most effortless money I'd ever made. Pure compensation for work I had already profited from, via total looting. The guy handed over the gold with a crooked smile that screamed, "I know you're robbing me blind, but your arrows terrify me way more than actual poverty." What a stellar transaction 10 days later. Spiral Lance was completely mastered at proficiency 123. As more phantom years of training slammed into my skull. This particular technique was the absolute jackpot. A monted combat maneuver that funneled the charging horse's raw momentum straight into a spinning spear strike, packing devastating armor-piercing power. My riding skills skyrocketed again as an added bonus, since executing the move demanded near-flawless horsemanship. Still no official riding mastery notification popped up on my system panel, though, which meant that specific milestone required even more grinding, definitely something to grind later. My raw physical strength now surpassed 600 pounds, breaking past the mid-level apprentice knight threshold. I totally could have strolled right into the Knights Guild and upgraded my official certification right then and there, if not for the minor detail that I was hiding out in a secret valley, training up an illegal army of former slaves, and didn't exactly want to broadcast my coordinates to the world. Then, wielding a massive two-handed greatsword, I dove headfirst in a mastering heavy strike. This was the exact lethal technique passed down to me from Gerhard's fallen lineage. For 2 grueling months, I swung a heavy iron blade that felt as dense as a small child. Before long, my dual-handed sword mastery hit a maxed-out proficiency of 100. Right on its heels, heavy strike maxed out at 110. This time around, my physical gains were honestly way less noticeable. At this stage, my body had already grown so jacked that beginner-tier technique buffs barely made any difference to my overall stats anymore. It was basically like trying to bulk up by curling weights that felt light as pillows. You seriously need way heavier challenges to see any real gains. I was pulling a solid 700 pounds of lifting strength now. High-level apprentice knights usually maxed out at around 1,000 pounds. Once you hit that threshold, your blood energy became thick enough to actually attempt crystallizing a life seed. That moment was the ultimate gateway to becoming a true knight. There was still a gap left to close, but I was climbing that ladder way faster than anyone in recorded history. Finally, the summit was actually coming into view. In between my brutal training sessions, I cashed in my mercenary bounties, practiced dragon breathing, until my veins felt like scorching streams of molten lava, and watched my ragged little crew transform from terrified farm slaves into a force that actually resembled real soldiers. 2 months of non-stop drill formations, weapon drills, flag signals, and tactical exercises had honestly worked absolute miracles. They stood tall, moved in sync, executed commands without a second thought, and finally developed that unmistakable look in their eyes that basically screamed, "Holy crap, I might actually survive this." Bandak, my seasoned hunter-class archer, spent weeks carefully vetting every single recruit to test their range combat potential before finally presenting me with exactly 2 candidates. Archery demanded pure, unadulterated natural talent. Long arms, hawk-sharp eyes, steady hands, and a spatial awareness that simply could not be taught. Out of a total of 60 trainees, only Kandal and Black Wheat possessed the full package. Both of them swore absolute loyalty. Both successfully cleared the system's minimum threshold, and both were seamlessly absorbed right into my party roster. My command hierarchy was locking into place nicely. Ayron instructing spear combat, Nick drilling axe technique. Eric teaching swordplay, Bandak coaching archery. Elia managing everything outside of direct combat, and Binakuk handling the vital intelligence network. 6 core instructors were actively shaping 60 raw recruits, with the absolute best graduates destined for my systems. Enhanced party slots, where they would receive game-changing magical upgrades, capable of compressing years of grueling training into mere seconds. By now, I had completely figured out the meta. The system wasn't just some overpowered personal tool for solo leveling. It was a massive force multiplier for an entire military empire. Every single party member I leveled up instantly became an instructor, capable of training 10 more recruits, and the finest of those would graduate into party members themselves, who would then train even more soldiers. It was an exponential growth engine, cleverly disguised as a gritty medieval military camp, entirely powered by cold hard cash, and one teenager's stubborn, unbreakable refusal to stay dead. 700 pounds of raw, physical muscle, and a total of 8 mastered combat techniques. My internal biology was literally being rewritten by a draconic breathing technique, while a secret stronghold churned out elite warriors. I'd stacked up almost 300 gold coins, leaving me with roughly half a year before the Empire completely wiped my family name off the map. The numbers finally started adding up in my favor, though they were never comfortable by any stretch. Yet the odds shifted from a total pipe dream to something crazy but totally doable. That broke orphan who once passed out fleeing from wild wolves was slowly evolving into a force this realm hadn't witnessed in ages. A fearsome Kalinso in the making. My ancestors had spent 3 centuries and an entire continent's wealth forging their dynasty, whereas I got a cheat code, a hidden valley, and the manic energy of a guy running on borrowed time inside a rented body. Somehow, that actually felt like enough. A grueling 3-month boot camp managed to morph my grimy bandit cave into a legitimate military academy, and my recruits went from not knowing which end of the sword was sharp, straight to barking, "Sir, yes, sir," way faster than I ever thought physically possible. Yet the real game-changer hit my inner circle when the system started doling out upgrades, like a ridiculously generous slot machine, having the absolute time of its life. Iron unlocked Tier 3 first as a Swadino light infantryman, and the steep price tag made my eye twitch hard. At 5 gold coins per upgrade, it was clear the system had just invented inflation, but seeing those insane results made every single coin worth it. Right there on the dusty training grounds, the man's muscle fibers literally ripped apart and rebuilt themselves in broad daylight while everyone watched in awe, and 3 combat skills he'd been desperately grinding for weeks to master, including swordsmanship, spin guard, and whirlwind slash, all downloaded into his brain simultaneously. Years of phantom combat memories flashed into his mind in mere seconds, sending him sprinting over to me, while shedding actual tears of pure gratitude, before dropping hard to his knees because a former slave, who had totally given up on ever becoming a pro fighter, had just skyrocketed to near mid-level apprentice knight status in the blink of an eye, boasting 500 pounds of raw lifting power, along with 3 master techniques. This guy was suddenly packing more heat than most professional Imperial soldiers, even though just 6 months prior, he was forced at spear point to harvest wheat for brutal bandits, who only threw him a single bread roll a day. Bandak stepped up the very next day, hitting Tier 3 as a Doro Archer with the same 5 gold price tag, and equally mind-blowing results, though focused on a completely different specialty. While Iron got brute physical force, Bandak was successfully converted into a living biological radar system. His eyesight, hearing, and sense of smell surged to heights that made actual forest animals seem completely deaf and blind by comparison. He mastered swordsmanship, archery, and spin guard all at the exact same time. And while his pure physical lifting capped out at 300 pounds, his agility and sensory perceptions reached borderline supernatural levels. Without missing a beat, he began hauling back massive amounts of wild game, deer, wild boar, and pheasant, that completely upgraded our camp's menu. From pathetic survival rations to genuine, high-quality nutrition, top-tier cuts always graced my plate first, because pulling rank definitely has its perks. Plus, I seriously needed the extra calories anyway, given how my dragon breathing technique burned through energy, like wildfire ripping through tissue paper. Maximum loyalty status was finally hit by both of them, maxing out at a solid 100 points. Iron because he stood out as the most dedicated trainee I had ever witnessed in action, and Bandak because a noble knight family lineage belonged to him in the Doro Empire before everything completely fell apart, and I accidentally handed him back the very future that brutal slavery had stolen away. Now, I had 2 guys willing to literally take a bullet for me, not out of any fear of my threats, but simply because I dropped something into their hands that nobody else across this entire world would ever offer. A fresh start fueled by some insane, game-breaking magic. Witnessing all of that firsthand, Eric and Nick started grinding like absolute beasts. 10 grueling days later, both successfully crossed the Tier 3 threshold. Iron's 3 technique loadout was successfully matched by Eric, though he packed slightly less raw power, owing to his younger age. Even if I had a gut feeling he would eventually outpace everyone, thanks to his family's blue falcon breathing style, synergizing smoothly with the system upgrades. Nick leaned completely into the Viking meta, rocking Berserker Axe Mastery alongside a heavy strike technique, while wielding a massive 2-handed, great axe with enough devastating force to cleave a target clean in half, straight down the middle. He kept his techniques minimal, packing terrifying single-target DPS. Alia took the final spot, but she made that wait totally worth it, stepping up as a female guardian. At Tier 3, with 4 distinct combat techniques unlocked, featuring swordsmanship, spin guard, whirlwind slash, and precision archery, she easily became the most versatile fighter in my roster, aside from myself, holding slightly less raw strength than Iron, yet matching Bandak's elite agility step for step, which allowed her to mix it up in close quarters, like a spinning vortex of steel, or drop back to snipe targets from afar with lethal arrows. From a humble camp follower, she had transformed into the second most dangerous asset in the valley, and she pulled that off while simultaneously handling all camp logistics, inventory tracking, and my own personal bathing schedule. Meanwhile, I spent my hours grinding my archery proficiency, as though my life depended on every single shot, which, historically speaking, it usually did. A fascinating quirk regarding the recruitment system also happened across my radar around then. Bandak trained a pair of archers utilizing strict Doro Empire methods, and the system categorized both of them as authentic Doro recruits, completely ignoring their actual nationalities, even though one originally hailed from the Doro Empire, while the other was born pure Swadino. Evidently, the system cared exclusively about training methodology, instead of boring birth certificates, locking that crucial data away in my mind for future army composition optimization strategies. The long-awaited final evaluation day finally hit, prompting me to put all 60 trainees through rigorous personal tests. Out of the bunch, 17 managed to clear my strict standards consisting of 8 swordsmen, 4 spearmen, 3 axemen, and bandaks, 2 pre-selected archers, yielding a success rate under 30%, which sounds pretty brutal until you put things into perspective. These ragged survivors were former slaves, who had only been handling weapons for a brief 3 months. Truly earning their spots, the 17 survivors made the cut, with Benin Cook right there among them, whose hidden talents apparently went way beyond fake tiers, straight into legit tactical combat skills. 5 Tier 3 upgrades were unlocked using 20 gold coins, giving us 5 soldiers, now operating at practically professional knight tier levels, with 17 qualified recruits totally set for squad deployment. Fresh game was kept rolling into camp by a dedicated hunting crew, while a local blacksmith slowly began decoding my messy saddle sketches, alongside a fresh training doctrine that had completely flipped a panicked mob of scarecrows into looking like a properly disciplined military squad. Just half a year ago, I was stuck dying of cancer playing video games, with zero friends, and now I'm a low-key warlord running an expanding army, wielding dragon powers, 8 personal combat styles, and a massive 700 pounds of raw physical strength, steadily grinding toward that milestone 1,000-pound mark, where true knighthood officially unlocks. The wind dragon was finally waking up, and it was starving. It was graduation day down at Eagle Beak Valley Military Academy, starting out with an enrollment of 60 traumatized former slaves, and ending with 17 graduates, giving us an acceptance rate worse than Harvard, though we came equipped with way more spears and 0 student loans. Lining them up, I delivered the speech, tapped shoulders using my trusty broadsword, like some medieval knighting factory line, and officially promoted the lot into professional soldiers. 17 absolute yes, sir. Machines who, only 3 months back, couldn't even grip a blade without dropping it right onto their own toes. Every single recruit was verified by the system to hold a loyalty rating, surpassing 60 genuine, quantifiable devotion, picked up straight by my invisible magical HR department, slotting 14 of them directly into my party roster. I purposely left one slot wide open, because booking every seat on the bus before checking out all the passengers is pure amateur hour. And then came the best part, dropping the new pay scale split into 3 tiers, because nothing motivates folks across any dimension quite like a visible ladder offering better food on each higher step. Tier 1 professional fighters and vital craftsmen pulled in 3 daily meals, including actual white bread, meat whenever available, and a monthly payout of 1 silver coin, while Tier 2 militia members, farming through harvest and drilling during downtime, received 3 meals consisting mostly of decent bread, occasional meat, and 10 copper coins. Tier 3, everyone else, was handed 2 meals of dark black bread, alongside the sweet privilege of staying alive. Was this generous by the standards of this brutal world? Oh, ridiculously so, seeing how regular peasants faced brutal taxes, endured forced labor, and collected literally 0 compensation other than whatever breathing permission their lord felt like giving. My lowest tier already beat out what most free citizens experience daily, making my top tier an absolute luxury that would leave city workers crying from pure envy. And the coolest part was that it barely cost me anything at all. Our valley grew all its own wheat, and the hunting party brought back wild game every single day, compared to hefty mercenary contracts each month. A mere silver coin per soldier felt like absolute pocket change. Up on the training ground wall, Elia pinned the freshly drawn pay charts, drawing the gaze of over 60 pairs of eyes, as they frantically calculated their own futures right then and there. Those 17 promoted fighters looked like they were practically glowing, while the regular militia members locked in with a fiery determination to grind harder. Even down at the bottom tier, the overworked laborers seemed genuinely relieved to finally trade their daily psychological terror of wondering if they'd catch a beating today just for breathing for some actual structure and certainty. Moving right along to priority number 2, weapons tech. I strolled over to check out Wibart's newly reconstructed forge. The guy had completely dismantled the old mountaintop blacksmith setup, dragging every single heavy tool all the way down the slope, and setting it back up cleanly in Eagle Beak Valley, with that eerie, quiet efficiency unique to someone who had been relocated so damn many times that assembling a workshop was basically his daily cardio workout. I had previously commissioned 300 custom arrows built strictly to my own specs, dubbed Wolf Fangs, featuring wicked serrated, multi-point steel heads, designed specifically to punch straight through leather armor, in turn pulling them out into an absolute screaming nightmare. Local mulberry wood made up the sturdy shafts. The fletching utilized tail feathers scavenged from ironbeak eagles, which Bandak's hunting crew had been tirelessly harvesting, and the arrowheads were supposed to be forged entirely out of steel. Cue the harsh reality check. Only 180 were finished, and a measly 30 actually featured proper steel heads. Poor Wibart's primitive charcoal furnace simply couldn't pump out enough heat to reliably convert basic iron into workable steel. Those 30 decent ones only existed because he'd melted down captured enemy weapons that were already close to steel grade, Ah, the classic medieval metallurgy struggle. You can easily design 21st century grade ammunition in your head, but you're still stuck cooking it over something that looks like an overly aggressive campfire. I gathered those 180 arrows and mentally filed away. Build a better furnace under the category of things to tackle whenever I'm not busy running a secret paramilitary operation on a tight deadline. Then came the real highlight, brand new bows. My old trusty composite bow had started feeling pretty much like a plastic toy ever since my physical strength surged way past the 700-pound mark. So I had tasked Elia with tracking down a skilled bowyer. And remarkably, she managed to sniff one out right here among our own people. Sarah's, a civilian craftsman in his 30s, who had spent years hiding his elite woodworking talent behind a deeply ingrained slave survival instinct. He had been quietly tearing apart every single captured bow sitting around the camp to deeply analyze their structural blueprints and rebuild them using craft techniques I'd literally never seen before. Today, he finally unveiled his ultimate masterpiece, a gorgeous recurved bow reinforced with layers of genuine horn, mulberry wood, and ox tendon glue, all meticulously sealed with protective tung oil, making it remarkably compact, portable, and fiercely lethal. When he stepped up to string it as a live demonstration for me, his face turned a violent purple from the intense physical strain, while the stubborn bowstring didn't even twitch an inch. We were talking a massive 300 pounds of draw weight here. Stepping right up, I casually pressed it into shape using just one hand, and locked the string into place as effortlessly as tying a shoelace. Possessing 300 pounds of pull power meant having a guaranteed 300 paces of killing range, backed by terrifying, armor-piercing lethality. Compared to this masterwork, my old composite bow looked like total trash, suddenly reduced to a mere child's plaything. This new recurve was an absolute beast, built strictly for war. It was precisely the kind of elite hardware that could elevate any skilled archer into a walking artillery unit. Not that I hugged it or anything, though I honestly plead the fifth on that. Dropping straight to his knees on the spot, Sarah's begged to immediately sign up with my faction as a dedicated master craftsman of equipment, having witnessed WibArt's VIP Tier 1 treatment firsthand, complete with full meals and deep respect, plus total creative freedom. He desperately wanted that exact same sweet deal for his woodworking. A system notification flashed. Apprentice carpenter Sarah's, loyalty at 72, is formally requesting party membership. Another crafting profession had just joined the fold with its own carpenter class, and a massive potential upgrade tree waiting to be unlocked, mirroring WibArt's elite blacksmithing class perfectly. Now I officially commanded both a weapons forge and a dedicated bow workshop, with system-enhanced craftsmen running the show, who would inevitably level up and get insanely good over time. While rival lords were stuck buying generic gear at bloated market prices, I was low-key constructing an in-house manufacturing base that would soon pump out custom military-grade hardware, strictly at cost. Accepting Sarah's happened faster than he could even finish his pledge, and I quickly distributed the 3 brand-new recurve bows right after. One went to Alia, another to Bandak, and the last one was stashed in reserve, before immediately jumping in and mapping out my next big play for tomorrow. Black Rock City demanded my presence to sort out several complex issues that simply couldn't be resolved from inside our hidden valley, while my family's strict deadline was ticking down fast. Eric and Alia were locked in to ride along with me, leaving Iron fully in charge of the valley during my absence, which felt either like a massive display of absolute trust or a wildly reckless gamble. Still, the guy boasted maxed-out loyalty, along with combat prowess dangerously close to Knight tier. If anyone on Earth could hold down the fort, it was definitely that former slave, who literally cried tears of joy when I gave him superpowers. Standing tall on the dusty tower steps that chilly evening, I watched my soldiers grinding through their tough evening drills, as thick plumes of smoke billowed from the glowing blacksmith forge and the bustling carpenter workshop, right amidst sweeping fields of nearly ripe golden wheat, gentling swaying in the cool mountain breeze. I suddenly hit one of those surreal clarity moments, where every single piece clicked completely into place. Just 7 short weeks ago, I had stumbled into this hidden valley, blindly chasing a rotting dead bandit's treasure map, and now it operated as a fully functioning military compound, pumping out elite troops, bespoke weapons, and enough food supplies to sustain operations for the long haul, going from a random squatter to a total warlord in 2 months flat. Honestly, not a bad plot twist for a supposedly dead man's comeback. 3 horses, 3 seasoned riders, and 1 shared mission. Extract every ounce of potential value out of Black Rock City before vanishing deep into the wild unknown to carve out an empire. Guiding my war horse forward felt as natural as if I had lived in the saddle, which couldn't be further from the truth. Yet after completely mastering the lethal spiral lance technique, my muscle memory instinctively knew how to ride effortlessly, just like my hands were hardwired for archery, and my sharp blade naturally gravitated toward enemy throats. All thanks to the system's phantom training. Those cherished memories kept paying dividends over and over again. Walking into the night certification office, it felt like they were rolling out the red carpet for us. The mid-level apprentice night exam was completely crushed by me, lifting a massive 600-pound weight overhead as if it were just a featherlight pillow. Mounted lance techniques were executed flawlessly from my warhorse, with enough sheer style that the poor examiner's eyebrows nearly vanished, straight up into his hairline, while Alia and Eric both breezed through the beginner exam on their very first attempt, proving that my grueling boot camp yielded results, which most formal training academies would literally trade their kidneys to successfully duplicate. 40 gold coins vanished entirely into certification fees alone, causing Alia to practically suffer a mild heart attack as she tallied up the expenses in her new role as my unofficial CFO. And watching her manage our finances resembled nothing less than a protective mother hawk, ferociously guarding her very last egg over 1,000 gold coins. Young lord, that is precisely what we require for this land expedition. We are literally burning through cash. By this point, I had completely tuned her out after her 5th dramatic sigh. Her math was undeniably accurate, yet she remained completely oblivious to my unbroken streak of accidentally stumbling headfirst into fortunes every single time I stepped outside. The absolute best part was that my party capacity instantly jumped to 35, the exact moment I earned my mid-level apprentice knight status, surging from 15 straight up to 35 with 1 official stamp. Every single rank upgrade essentially meant doubling the total size of the army I could magically empower. Imagining how many troops I would command by the time I finally reached full knight rank filled me with the prospect of fielding an entire battalion of system-upgraded super soldiers, and just thinking about it made me giddy. Still, there was a harsh, painful reality I had been actively dodging. Iron, Bandak, and Nick remained completely ineligible for certified knight status due to being branded as slaves, and with their original slavery contracts having long since vanished somewhere along that nightmarish journey which brought them into my life. The Empire officially classified them as dangerous runaways. Runaway slaves were barred from registering as professionals. Period. Securing their legal freedom demanded a noble lord's formal sponsorship, coupled with 10 times their baseline market value in release fees. Given their current high combat levels, each one was easily valued at 100 gold pieces, amounting to a steep 1,000 gold per person just to set them free, totaling a staggering 3,000 gold, which ate up my entire projected land expedition budget, merely to process some bureaucratic paperwork. The Empire's entire administrative system felt custom-built by sadists, meaning they were destined to remain my loyal slave soldiers forever. Phenomenal fighters, who could never truly operate as independent agents, permanently tethered to me by glowing magical neck tattoos, and sheer economic impossibility. Fortunately, the system itself cared very little about mere legal status, measuring unyielding loyalty rather than paperwork liberty. Though the whole situation still left a bitter aftertaste. We officially registered as the Hurricane Mercenary Squad, down at the guild, entirely my brainchild, because Hurricane sounded appropriately chaotic and destructive for a squad commanded by a moody teenager harboring major anger management issues, trapped inside a mysterious pocket dimension. Our paperwork was smoothly handled by the blonde receptionist, sporting her signature corporate grin. And I totally didn't turn bright red when she flashed me a quick wink. Like, absolutely not at that moment. Out of nowhere, Baruko showed up, giving off major friendly grizzly bear vibes, tracking down some easy money. Some gig requiring heavy muscle was being fronted by the Wild Bull Captain, an escort gig protecting a frontier baron known as Howlings, who brought in slaves and cargo straight from the Imperial interior. Black Rock City was set to receive the shipment in 3 days. A crew of 30 mercenaries, was the bare minimum to cover that brutal 500-mile trek to his territory, nested deep in the eastern wasteland. A 100 gold coin payout was up for grabs, split based on contribution. Without missing a beat, I took the deal, then casually dropped that I'd be bringing along 11 extra helpers, on top of our 3 registered mercenaries. Baruko's face totally lit up. Getting 14 fighters for the price of 3 was absolute peak math wizardry from his point of view. There was zero reason for him to know my entourage was packed with Tier 3 system-boosted warriors, capable of solo entire squads of seasoned professional soldiers, letting him assume they were just regular servants. Honestly, plot twists make things way more fun while hanging at the guild. I snatched up 2 extra contracts targeting that exact same zone. First off, a wolf extermination bounty in Howling's territory that had been collecting dust on the board for months. 50 gold just for stepping foot there, plus a sweet kill bonus, though nobody had dared touch it, because traveling 500 miles into the wasteland sounded like an absolute nightmare for average mercenaries, but for me, it was just a convenient side quest, sitting right on the path we were already taking. Secondly, an exploration commission, originated by the adjacent Maple Leaf territory, offering loose guidelines and negotiable pay. The assignment was to scope out the surrounding wilderness, with 0 specific threats mentioned on paper, which could either mean the area was actually chill, or so ridiculously dangerous that the Baron refused to scare potential applicants away. Either way, scouting out the eastern wasteland was on my to-do list anyway, before filing the paperwork for my own land permit. Getting handed cash for recon work I had already planned to do wasn't just efficiency, it was pure art. Glancing over the board, I saw that the massive 500 gold undead extermination contract from that region had been pulled down, meaning someone either beat it or bit the dust trying. And the Baron ultimately chose to stop funding endless mercenary funerals. Neither scenario sounded remotely comforting to deal with. Though, undead weren't my concern anyway. Dealing with those things required absolute elite-tier blood energy, just to stay breathing in their vicinity, while I was still practically an apprentice, fueled completely by ambition and protein. Making our final pit stop at the Crow's Nest Apothecary, we grabbed 2 vials of actual healing potion, authentic wizard brewed juice, the kind where you chug it and your open lacerations instantly seal shut. Total miracle juice in a bottle. Totally different from that nasty black tar ointment we'd been relying on. Kosting 10 gold kains 15 flask. Elias suddenly stared right at me, as though I had suggested setting cash on fire to stay warm. Standard healing salve is totally fine, young lord. Elia, our lives are way more valuable than gold. We don't need to pinch pennies here. Out in the brutal wasteland, second chances don't exist, and neither do doctors. Taking a sharp spear straight through the ribs means slathering some shady black paste on it and just crossing your fingers, which is basically how you book a funeral. Instead of actually avoiding one, she kept her mouth shut, though internally, I could practically picture her scribbling down another 20 gold pieces in the loss column, while dying a little bit on the inside. She chose not to press the argument any further, though. Being a sharp cookie, she knew when the boss was dead right, even if being right cost a pretty penny. Lighter by 20 gold, heavier by 2 miracle potions, enriched with 3 brand-new mercenary contracts, and boasting a beefed-up party capacity of 35 battle-ready soldiers. We finally rolled out of Black Rock City, heading toward Eagle Beak Valley, with a mission to round up our troops in 3 days flat. We would march back with a low-key mini-army disguised as a simple entourage, hook up with a convoy, stretching 500 miles deep into monster-ridden wilderness, and kick off the ultimate sprint to stake my absolute claim on this world. The Hurricane Mercenary Squad, baby. I'm seriously vibing with the sound of that name. Small right now, sure, but every massive hurricane always starts out as a tiny breeze that nobody ever takes seriously.